Good evening, night wanderers. You've found your way to the late-hour frequency, the one you don't see on the dial, the one that only comes clear when the rest of the world is asleep. Out there, clocks keep turning. But here, time doesn't move in straight lines. Here it folds, like the dark water of a river bending back on itself. If you stay with me, keep the lights low. Turn the volume down just enough that you can hear your own breathing between the words. And remember, you didn't tune in to fall asleep. You tuned in because you wanted to know what waits when the world grows quiet. The fever of the kept child, the old wells of Virginia, never dry out. Even when the farms have turned to dust and the creeks vanish under the weight of summer, the wells still whisper with water far below, like lungs that never stop breathing. And sometimes, people swear those whispers carry names. It was on a night like that, wet, swollen with thunder, the smell of pine sharp as a blade, that Alice drove her daughter Lily back home. The wipers beat across the windshield, a nervous rhythm keeping time with the storm. The two-lane road wound through the hills like a snake too restless to sleep. Headlights struck the tall pines on either side, their trunks silvered and wet, their crowns bending as if the forest itself bowed to something unseen. Alice kept her hands tight on the wheel. The clock on the dashboard blinked past 11. Too late, she thought, for a child to be awake. But in the rearview mirror, Lily's small face hovered pale against the glass, her eyes wide and unblinking as she stared out into the trees. The rain drummed harder, rattling the roof of the car. "Almost home," Alice said, forcing brightness into her voice. But Lily didn't answer. Instead, a thin sound leaked from her lips. Not a cry, not a word, something in between. A murmur, like a child talking in her sleep. Alice turned down the radio, straining. "She's calling me." Alice's chest tightened. "What, baby?" Lily pressed her forehead against the window. Raindrops streamed down, carving the reflection of her face into watery pieces. "She's calling me. The lady." Alice swallowed hard. "There's no one out there, sweetheart. Just trees." But Lily shook her head, her wet hair clinging to her cheeks. "No, she's walking. Between the trees." She said my name. Alice flicked her eyes to the forest's edge. Headlights broke against the trunks, throwing momentary shadows between them. She saw nothing but dripping bark and bristling needles, yet her skin prickled as though unseen eyes pressed close to the glass. "You imagined it," she whispered, more to herself than to Lily. The road curved, and through the blur of rain, Alice caught the first glimpse of home. The silhouette of the old house crouched at the edge of their property, its roof pitched steep against the storm. Beyond the fence, the garden lay drowned in shadow, wild and overgrown. Somewhere back there, though the night refused to show it, was the well, the one that had stood sealed and forgotten long before Alice ever moved in. By the time she parked, Lily had begun to cry in earnest. Her small hands clutched the seatbelt, her shoulders trembling. "Hey," Alice soothed, unbuckling to lean back. "It's all right, love. We're safe now. Just a storm, that's all." But when she pressed her palm to Lily's forehead, the skin burned, a heat too sudden, too fierce for a child who'd been fine hours earlier. The fever had already begun. The front door resisted as Alice pushed it open, swollen with damp. The hallway smelled of wet wood and dust, the kind that never left no matter how much you scrubbed. The storm rattled the windows, and the lights flickered as she carried Lily upstairs. The child's head lolled against her shoulder, lips moving around words Alice couldn't catch. She laid her daughter in bed, pulled the quilt up to her chin, and sat watching as the child's eyes fluttered closed. But even in sleep, Lily whispered. The same fragments again and again. The lady by the well." Alice brushed a hand through her hair and forced herself to breathe. Children imagine things. They always had. The mind of a 5-year-old was a hall of mirrors where fear and fantasy walked side by side. Tomorrow, the fever would break, and Lily would forget. She left a glass of water on the bedside table, kissed her daughter's damp forehead, and backed out of the room. The hallway yawned open, lined with old photographs left by the house's previous owners. Faces stared in sepia, all of them strangers. Downstairs, the storm moaned through the chimney, carrying with it the low, trickling sound of water. Alice paused on the landing. Her heart drummed once, hard. The sound came again, a splash, soft but deliberate, from the yard. Her mind leapt instantly to the well, but that was impossible. The thing had been capped with stone decades ago. No water should move there. No one should be near it. She gripped the banister until her knuckles whitened. It's the rain, she told herself. Just the rain. And yet, as she whispered the words, she thought she heard her name breathed back to her thin, almost swallowed by thunder. Alice. Her throat tightened. The storm roared, covering everything, and she forced herself to descend the stairs. She would lock the doors, every last one. She would not look out the back window. She would not. Still, the image of the well rose in her mind. Dark stone, moss, slick, a circle of shadow that had always seemed deeper than it should be. And somewhere in that darkness, a voice, rising with the water. The fever climbed as though it had a will of its own. By midnight, Lily's skin glistened with sweat, damp strands of hair plastered to her temples. She tossed beneath the quilt, her breath shallow, her cheeks flushed with unnatural heat. Alice sat at the bedside with a damp cloth, dabbing her daughter's forehead, whispering small comforts that went unanswered. She had known fevers before. Children caught them easily, burned through them, and forgot. But this one arrived like a storm in the bones, too sudden, too sharp, too consuming. Lily's lips moved restlessly. At first, Alice thought she was dreaming, some nonsense phrases slipping through. But then, between the fragments, she heard words that knifed through the dim room. By the well. She's waiting. Don't let her in. Alice froze, the cloth dripping cool water onto her lap. Sweetheart, she whispered, leaning close. What well? You mean the old one in the garden? That's just stone, love. No one's there. Lily turned her head on the pillow, her eyes fluttering open for the briefest instant. They were glazed, unfocused, but the words pushed out anyway. She's standing there. She says she's lonely. She wants me to come. Alice pressed trembling fingers to her daughter's cheek. It's the fever talking. Just the fever. But even as she said it, the storm outside pressed closer against the walls, the windows rattling with sudden bursts of wind. Beneath that storm, beneath the normal sounds of rain and distant thunder, Alice thought she caught it again, her name, whispered low, almost playful. Alice. The syllables brushed against the glass. She shot a glance toward the window, but the curtains hung heavy, unmoving. No more, she told herself. No more staring at shadows. She rose, fetched a bowl of cold water, and wrung out the cloth anew. Yet as she returned to the bedside, her own reflection in the mirror startled her. For a split second, it looked as though another face hovered behind hers, pale, hollow-eyed, damp hair clinging to the skull. She blinked, and it was gone, only her own tired features staring back. Alice laughed under her breath, a hollow sound. I need sleep, she murmured. That's all. Downstairs, the house breathed in its old way, floorboards shifting, beams sighing. Every old house did it, but tonight those sounds arranged themselves too carefully. They had rhythm, like something pacing. She tried the kettle, but the power flickered with the storm. Gas hissed reluctantly before catching flame, a blue tongue licking the bottom of the pot. The kitchen smelled of wet plaster and smoke. As she waited, she let her gaze wander to the back window. Beyond the curtain lay the yard, the garden drowned in darkness, the well crouched somewhere at its heart. She couldn't see it, but she felt its presence as surely as if it had been pressed against the glass. The kettle whistled sharply, snapping her back. She poured water into a mug, mixed the medicine, and returned upstairs. Lily was sitting up. Alice's breath caught. The girl's eyes were half closed, her body swaying gently, but her voice carried through the dim room with eerie clarity. She says you should come too, Mommy. She says the water's cold, but it won't hurt. Alice hurried to the bed, easing her daughter back down. No, love, no one's talking to you. You're sick, that's all. She held the mug to Lily's lips, coaxing a sip. The child drank weakly, then whispered against the rim, She knows your name. Alice almost dropped the cup. Stop, don't say that. But Lily smiled faintly in her fevered haze. She already did. Alice pulled the quilt higher, though the room felt hotter than ever. She sat, listening to the storm batter the roof, every gust sounding more like breath, every splash more like footsteps in the garden mud. She fought to stay awake, but exhaustion dragged at her. At some point her eyes closed, though her ears never fully let go of the world. And in that half-dream, half-sleep place the whispers came again, not from Lily, From somewhere deeper in the house, they slipped between the beams, riding the storm, curling up the staircase. A woman's voice, faint but certain. Alice. The sound stroked the syllables like fingers on piano keys. Alice jerked awake, heart hammering. She stared at Lily, but the child slept now, damp hair against the pillow, chest rising and falling. No words left her lips. The whispers had not come from the bed. They had come from the yard. She crept to the window, parting the curtain by a finger's width. Rain streamed down the glass, distorting the view into ripples and smears. Yet through the shifting dark, she thought she glimpsed at something pale at the garden's center, standing too still against the storm's fury. The shape bent slowly, as though leaning over, toward the well. Alice's throat closed. She dropped the curtain and stumbled back, her pulse roaring in her ears. No, she would not look again. She turned, forcing herself to sit by her daughter's side. She would not leave. She would not listen. But even as she pressed her hand to Lily's burning skin, she knew the whispers would return. They always did, and each time, they came closer. The night refused to end. Hours crawled by, thick as tar, each second stretching until Alice thought the clock must be mocking her. She sat in the chair beside Lily's bed, her own body heavy and hollow, eyelids grinding with exhaustion. The storm had gentled into a steady drizzle, yet inside the house the tension only sharpened. The walls felt thinner, the air denser, as though the house itself leaned in to listen. Alice shifted, her spine aching. She closed her eyes for just a moment, but the moment multiplied, expanding into that dangerous half-place where sleep and waking traded masks. It was there, in that blurred edge, that she first heard it again. "Alice, come down." The whisper slithered into her ear, soft and feminine, yet strangely stretched, as though the syllables had been pulled through water. Her eyes snapped open. She looked at Lily. The child lay limp, damp with fever sweat, lips moving faintly. For an instant, Alice believed the words had come from her daughter. But then Lily turned her head, and in the faint light her mouth shaped different sounds, broken fragments about cold, about the well, words that stumbled but never quite formed her mother's name. No, the whisper hadn't been hers. Alice rose, her legs unsteady, the floorboards creaking like old breath beneath her weight. She stepped into the hallway, holding her own breath against the hush. The photographs on the wall stared as always, though tonight their eyes seemed glossier, almost wet. She pulled the bedroom door halfway shut behind her, leaving only a crack so she could hear Lily if she stirred. The air smelled faintly metallic, like coins soaked in rain. She followed it down the staircase, hand grazing the banister. Shadows moved with her, shifting too quickly for the simple bulb at the landing. When she reached the bottom, she froze. The back door stood ajar, not wide, only an inch, but enough to let the night seep in, enough to breathe the storm's damp breath across the kitchen tiles. Alice's stomach nodded. She remembered turning the bolt. She was sure of it. She crossed the room, pushed the door shut, twisted the lock until it clicked. Her hand trembled as she drew it back. That was when she noticed the footprints, small, muddy shapes pressed across the linoleum, darker than the rest of the wet floor. They led from the door to the rug and vanished there, swallowed by fabric. Her pulse slammed against her ribs. The prints were too small to be hers, too wide to be Lily's. And barefoot, Alice staggered back a step, shaking her head. "No," she muttered. "No, no, no." She flicked the light switch, but the bulb above sputtered and died, leaving her in a gray wash of moonlight from the curtains. And in that grayness, she heard it again, closer this time. "Alice." She spun toward the voice, her breath sharp in her throat, nothing but the curtain shifting with the draft. Upstairs, Lily moaned in her fever. Alice rushed back, nearly tripping over the last step. She flung the door open. Expecting what? She didn't know. The girl writhed against the sheets, her voice high and cracked. "She says it's cold. She says you'll see if you look." Alice knelt beside her, clutching her hand. "Who, baby? Who says?" But Lily only shook her head violently, whispering through clenched teeth. Don't open the lid." Alice's blood iced. She knew the child meant the well, though no one had spoken of its lid in years. She herself had never mentioned it to Lily. She pressed trembling lips to her daughter's damp knuckles, whispering a prayer she hadn't said since childhood. That was when the mirror moved. The tall one in the corner of the room, an old heirloom left by the house's previous owners, gave a faint shiver. Not the glass itself, but the reflection inside it, like water quivering from a drop. Alice stared. Her own shape swam there, but slightly delayed, as though the mirror had forgotten to keep up. And then, for a heartbeat, there were three shapes. Her, Lily, and behind them, another. A woman, bent, hair dripping dark across her face, hand outstretched. Alice gasped, and the image snapped back to two. She lunged forward, yanking the sheet across the mirror's surface. Her breath came hard, her chest tight as though she'd run miles. She sat on the bed's edge, fingers pressed hard against her temples. Sleep, that was all she needed. Just 1 hour, one moment to close her eyes without seeing shapes in glass or hearing voices in the storm. But when she leaned back, letting her head rest against the wall, she heard the whisper again. Not from the garden, not from the hall, from inside the room, from beneath the floorboards. Alice, come down. Her eyes shot open, the sound vibrating faintly through the wooden boards like something knocking from the other side. She clapped her hands over her ears, tears brimming. Stop it, she whispered. Stop saying my name. But the boards thrummed once more, and she knew no matter how tightly she shut her eyes, no matter how loudly she prayed, the house itself had begun to answer. The rain had thinned to mist, but the night was anything but silent. It was water that woke her, the sound of it, too close, too deliberate. Not the steady drizzle on the roof, not the trickle in the gutter, but something heavier, splashing, as though hands stirred it. Alice's eyes snapped open. She hadn't meant to sleep, but exhaustion had claimed her in the chair. The lamp had burned out, leaving only the thin glow of stormlight through the curtains, and beneath it the sound came again. Spish, spish, as though someone were scooping water. Her stomach clenched. Slowly she rose, careful not to wake Lily, who muttered fevered fragments into her pillow. Alice crossed the room, feet bare on the cold boards, and pressed 2 fingers against the curtain. Outside, the garden waited. The moon swam behind clouds, spilling a weak silver across the yard. The grass shone slick, bending under weight of rain. And there, at the far center, she saw it. The well. The lid had always been there, a heavy round of stones sunk into moss. Yet now, impossibly, it was moved aside, rolled just enough to reveal the black mouth beneath. And bent over that mouth was a woman. Her dress clung white and sodden, plastered against her thin frame. Her hair hung in strings, dripping into the darkness. She scooped water up with both hands, letting it spill back down in languid arcs, again and again, as though washing something no one could see. Alice's throat closed. She backed from the curtain, whispering, "No, no, it's not there. I didn't see that. I didn't." But then, "Mommy," the voice was Lily's. Alice froze, spinning toward the bed. Lily lay asleep, lips parted, chest rising shallowly. Not a sound escaped her. The voice had not come from the bed. It had come from the garden. She clutched the doorframe, knuckles white. The voice came again, softer, coaxing. "Mommy, come help me. The water's too cold. Please, Mommy." Alice's knees weakened. Every instinct screamed to stay with her daughter, but the sound dug into her bones, unbearable in its imitation of Lily's cry. She stumbled to the stairs, half conscious of her own breath rasping. The house seemed to lean with her descent, floorboards bowing toward the garden side, every wall directing her like a funnel. In the kitchen, the air stank of wet earth. She saw muddy streaks across the tiles again, fresher now, glistening. They led straight to the back door. Her hand hovered over the lock. "No," she whispered. "If I open this, I won't come back." But then, Alice. The voice was not Lily's this time. It was lower, fluid, like water pouring through a throat. And it knew her name. The lock slid beneath her fingers before she realized she'd moved. The door eased open, and the garden exhaled cold breath into her lungs. The grass soaked her feet instantly, icy needles pricking her skin. She clutched her robe tighter, stepping forward as if against her own will. The garden seemed endless under the moonlight. The path twisted where it had never twisted, hedges taller than she remembered, every shadow pressing close. Yet the well stood clear ahead, its stone rim slick and shining, and the woman still bent over it, hair streaming into the dark mouth, hands cupped full of black water. Alice's breath caught. She wanted to run, but the voice came again. Sweet as sugar, cruel as hunger. She's waiting for you, Alice. She's always been waiting. The woman straightened. Her face rose from the shadows. It was pale, almost translucent, eyes hollowed as though carved from the skull. Her lips curved into a slow smile, and when she spoke, the sound was unmistakably Lily's. "Mommy, help me." I fell in. Alice's vision blurred. For a heartbeat, she saw not a woman but her daughter's small arms reaching from the well's mouth, hair plastered to a burning forehead, eyes wide in terror. Alice staggered forward, hands outstretched. No, you're here. You're upstairs." But her body betrayed her. She reached the well, breath sharp, heart in her throat. The woman's wet fingers slid across the stone rim, beckoning. Behind her, the house groaned, as though calling her back. Alice turned, torn. She thought she heard Lily cry from the upstairs window, but the sound blurred, doubled, became laughter too deep to belong to a child. When she looked again, the figure by the well was closer, her hand almost brushing Alice's. "Come see what waits beneath. Come keep her company." The words dripped into Alice's ear like ice water. She leaned forward, peering into the well. Darkness swirled, slick and endless. And in that black, she thought she saw faces, pale ovals drifting, lips moving though no sound rose. She reeled back, clutching her mouth. The world spun, the garden suddenly alien, too vast, the air too thick. She stumbled, desperate to turn, to flee, but the woman's hand caught her wrist, cold, soaked, stronger than any fever dream should be. Alice gasped, tugging, but the grip only tightened, and from below the whispers rose in chorus. "Alice, Alice, Alice." They had always known her name. The woman's grip seared Alice with its chill. It was not a hand so much as a length of soaked cloth, heavy and slick, yet impossibly strong. Alice clawed against it, nails scraping skin, or what she thought was skin. Her own pulse thundered in her ears, drowning out the rain. "Let me go," she gasped. "I have to my daughter." The woman tilted her head, hair dripping in long strands, water pattering against the stone rim. Her face remained pale, featureless in the moonlight, until the mouth curved, and when it opened, the sound was Lily's. "Mommy, don't leave me, please. I'm so cold." Alice's knees buckled. Every nerve in her body screamed retreat, yet the mother in her surged forward. For a breathless instant, she believed, truly believed, that Lily was down there, trapped, calling for rescue. "No," she whispered, shaking her head, tugging back toward the house. "You're not her. You can't be." But the woman's lips moved again, and this time the voice cracked, fragile, exactly as it had when Lily was 5 and afraid of the dark. "Please, Mommy, don't make me stay alone." Alice's strength shattered. The hand pulled once, firmly, and she stumbled closer. The stone rim pressed against her thighs. She looked down, heart hammering, into the open mouth of the well. Darkness, water far below, glimmering faintly with the stolen light of the moon. Ripples spread outward, as though something stirred just beneath the surface. And there in that glimmer she saw Lily's face. Her daughter's small features floated upward through the black, hair fanned like seaweed, lips parted in a silent plea. The eyes locked on hers. Alice sobbed, half falling over the rim. No, you're upstairs, you're sick, you're safe." Yet the image below mouthed the words again. "Mommy, come down." Behind her, the house loomed, a hulking silhouette against the sky. For a moment she thought she heard Lily's real voice echo from the window. A weak cry, a fevered call, but the sound warped in the air, blending with the woman's whisper by her side, until both voices spoke as one. "She's waiting. She's always been waiting." Alice clutched her ears, screaming, "Stop it!" But even with her ears covered, the words bloomed inside her head, like water rushing into a hollow shell. She staggered back from the rim, tearing free of the woman's grip. Mud slicked under her bare feet, pulling her down. The garden seemed to stretch longer with every step, hedges crowding in, shadows shifting. She tried to run, but her body felt weighted, as though the air itself had thickened. Every breath burned. Her heart pounded in panic, yet her vision narrowed, her legs sluggish. Behind her, the splash of water grew louder. Not one pair of hands anymore, but many. Buckets overturned, palms slapping water, a chorus of unseen figures pulling at the depths, and through it all the chant, "Alice, Elise. She reached the door. Hands fumbled at the knob. She shoved, slammed it shut behind her, bolted it. The kitchen closed around her, damp and airless. She sagged against the door, gasping. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Soft, upstairs. She dragged herself to the staircase, each step a battle against the weakness in her knees. Her hand clutched the banister, slick with her own sweat. "Lily," she croaked. The footsteps paused, and then tiny, uneven. Familiar, she heard the padding of small feet across the floorboards of the bedroom. Relief surged hot and wild. She nearly ran, nearly burst into the room, until she saw the bed, still, empty. The quilt lay rumpled, the pillow damp with sweat, but Lily was gone. Alice's scream tore her throat raw. She whirled, scanning every corner, pulling open the closet, shoving aside shadows. Nothing. Her chest heaved. Her mind clutched desperately at explanation, sleepwalking, fever pulling her outside anything but what her eyes told her. She raced back down the hall, the walls squeezing tighter, the photographs seeming to grin as she passed. Downstairs again, toward the door. It hung ajar, and beyond it, through the pale wash of moonlight, stood the woman. Only now she was closer, directly on the grass, and in her arms, cradled against her soaked dress, was Lily. Alice froze, every part of her torn between collapse and sprint. The woman lifted her head. Water ran down her face, masking features that shifted between stranger and child, mother and daughter. Her eyes were wide hollows filled with dark water. She raised one hand, fingers lifted, and she waved. Not a beckon, no. A child's small wave, shy and trusting. When she spoke, it was Lily's exact voice, tender and pleading. "Tell Mommy, don't let me go alone." Alice staggered forward, tears streaming hot against her cold skin. "Lily," she whispered. "Baby, please." Her feet left the doorway. The night swallowed her. The last thing she remembered before the world tilted was the feel of wet grass clinging to her ankles, the sight of her daughter's small hand still waving, and the echo of her name, pulled apart syllable by syllable, sinking into the black mouth of the well. Lee, say. By morning, the house was silent. The bed upstairs held only a quilt, twisted and damp with fevered sweat. The glass of water sat untouched, the mirror draped. The garden, too, was quiet. The lid of the well sat in place once more, sealed as if it had never moved. Only the grass bore traces of night. 2 sets of prints, one larger, one smaller, both fading into the rim of stone. And if anyone had been near enough to lean close, they might have heard it water breathing, deep below, carrying the faintest lilt of a child's laughter. The fortune teller's eye. The cold in Ashford Hollow was not the kind that bit its skin. It was quieter than that, a stillness that slid under the doorframes and nested in the walls. The air seemed to wait, holding its breath between the pines, watching for someone to step wrong. Anya felt it the moment she arrived. Her car's headlights cut the narrow street into ribbons of pale gray, but the houses on either side seemed to lean away from the light. Shutters hung crooked. Porches sagged under the weight of damp wood. A dog barked once and fell silent, as if warned. By the time she reached the end of the road, the chill had crawled into her chest. The house waiting there was the oldest of them all. Salt box frame, roof buckled, a sign above the door swaying on rusted hooks. A painted eye stared back at her, its colors drained by decades of rain. Inside, the fortune teller lived. She had heard of him in passing, the way people hear of old fires or drowned bridges. Half fact, half rumor. A man who never left town. A man who owned a mirror that no one else dared keep. Anya stepped out of the car, gravel crunching sharp underfoot. The night wrapped tight around her shoulders, and for a moment she almost turned back. But her life had been unraveling for months, her job gone hollow, her friends scattered, her heart heavier than it had ever been. She told herself it was only curiosity that brought her here, nothing more. A question whispered in the dark. What comes next? Her knuckles rapped against the door. The sound seemed to sink rather than echo, absorbed by the wood. When the door opened, she nearly stepped back. Elias Crowther stood framed in a thin lamp glow. His figure stooped, but not fragile, more like a tree bent in constant wind. His eyes were the only thing alive in that tired face. Gray, sharp, cutting. They fastened on her the way a blade finds its sheath. "You came," he said. No greeting, no surprise. Only certainty. Anya swallowed. I wanted to ask about the future. The corners of his mouth tugged downward, though not quite in disapproval. He stepped aside, the wood of the floor sighing beneath him. Then come where it waits. The air inside was heavy with cedar smoke and wax. Shadows crowded close to the rafters. Shelves sagged with books too old to read, spines furred with dust. A clock ticked somewhere, slow and arrhythmic, as though it had grown tired of keeping proper time. And there against the far wall stood the mirror. Anya felt the pull before she even saw it clearly. Tall, framed in wood the color of coal, the glass was darker than night itself. It did not reflect the room so much as erase it. No matter how the lamp flame flickered, the mirror held its surface still, as if it belonged to a world without fire. Her mouth went dry. "That's it?" she whispered. Elias's gaze followed hers. His expression shifted something between reverence and warning. "That is what remains," he said. She frowned. "Of what?" He did not answer. Instead, he crossed to a chair, pulled it with a slow scrape across the floor, and set it facing the mirror. The gesture had a ritual weight, as though it had been performed countless times before. "Sit." Anya hesitated, the boards cool under her shoes, the air cooler still. Every instinct screamed that this was not a place to linger. Yet her body moved forward, lowering itself into the chair. The mirror loomed before her. At first, it showed only a pale ghost of her own outline, smeared as though underwater. Elias lit a candle at the base. The flame flickered long in the glass, stretched unnaturally, bending like a reed in unseen current. His voice dropped. "This mirror does not bargain in futures. It does not flatter. It does not lie. It remembers. And if you look long enough, it will make you remember too." Her pulse stuttered. "Remember what?" "The things that lived before you. The things that refused to be forgotten." The room pressed tighter around her, the air humming against her ears. She tried to steady her breath, but the glass shifted. The blackness deepened. Somewhere inside it, a sound stirred. Faint, hollow, the clatter of hooves on stone. Anya's hands dug into the arms of the chair. The image rose through the dark. Earth split open, a grave torn wide by rough hands. Behind it, a figure armored in silver, hair caught in the sunday. A woman, fierce and beautiful, her eyes filled with fire. Then the scene fractured. Soldiers, screams, steel flashing. The woman struck down, her body dragged across dirt, her armor shattering beneath blades. Anya's throat clenched. She tried to look away, but the mirror held her in place, forcing her to drink the vision until it bled into shadow again. She turned sharply toward Elias. "What was that?" His gaze was steady. Sorrow threaded through his words. "The past. Not yours. Not meant for you." Her breath came hard, chest heaving. "Then why did I see it?" "Because you reached too far." His voice was nearly a whisper. "Because the mirror is hungry. You have taken something it will demand back. And when it comes for you," he looked at her with eyes that seemed to see farther than she wanted, "it will not come alone." Anya could not shake the weight of the mirror. Even after she left Elias's house, the air of Ashford Hollow clung to her clothes. Her car's engine sputtered down the narrow road, headlights sliding across trees wet with mist, but the silence pressed heavier than the hum of tires. She kept checking the rear view. Not for cars, there were none this late, but for the memory of what she had seen. The armored woman, the grave, the sudden, brutal tearing of flesh. Her own reflection in the mirror's glass had looked so fragile compared to that past, as if she had been the intruder. She rubbed her eyes hard at a stop sign. It's just an image, a trick of suggestion. But when she blinked, the sound hit her again. A metallic clang, sharp, ringing, undeniable. She jolted, hands tightening on the wheel. The empty street gave nothing back, yet in her bones, she swore she'd heard a sword strike another. Her apartment felt colder than usual when she stepped inside. The radiator groaned but offered little warmth. She flicked on the light. Nothing unusual. The small couch, the scattered books, the faint hum of the refrigerator. But her reflection in the hallway mirror stopped her breath. She stood there, bag slipping off her shoulder, staring at herself. Yet the face in the glass was not quite hers. The jaw was sharper, the cheekbones higher. Shadows deepened, as though carved by hardship. And the eyes, God, the eyes blazed. She blinked, and it was gone. only her own tired features staring back. Her stomach twisted. She dropped her bag, pressed both hands to the frame of the mirror, willing her pulse to slow. "Get a grip," she whispered. "Sleep. That's all you need." But when she turned away, the faint sound of hooves followed her into the kitchen. By morning, her dreams clung like cobwebs. She could not remember them clearly, only flashes, a field soaked in blood, a hand reaching for hers, a scream that was half hers and half someone else's. She made coffee, bitter and black. The steam rose into her face, but even there she smelled iron, sharp and wrong. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "You should not have looked so long." Her heart leapt to her throat. She nearly dropped the mug. The number had no name, no history. Just those words. Her fingers shook as she typed back. "Who is this?" No answer. Only silence that felt full, as though the phone itself listened. By evening, she returned to Elias's house. The man was waiting at the doorway, as though he had known she would come. His gray eyes sharpened when he saw her face. "You heard them." It was not a question. Anya's mouth went dry. "I saw her in my own mirror. Just for a second. And the sounds. I keep hearing." Elias lifted a hand, silencing her. He turned, beckoned her inside. The house smelled the same. Cedar, wax, old dust. The mirror loomed in its place, dark and patient. Anya shuddered. "Tell me what's happening." Elias lowered himself into a chair, his movements deliberate, weighted by years. The mirror does not give without taking. It remembers the lives it has held, and it lets those who dare look borrow a fragment. But a borrowed fragment is theft, no matter how small. A memory is not yours to keep. A soul never forgets what is stolen. Her pulse thudded in her ears. "So what, I stole something from that woman? From her death?" His gaze did not waver. "From her soul. You pulled it through the glass and into yourself. Now she feels the loss. She will reach for what is hers." Anya hugged her arms across her chest. "But I didn't mean to. I didn't even want to see that. I wanted to know my future." A shadow flickered across Elias's face. "The mirror does not care what you wanted. It shows what it chooses. And now, she chooses you." That night, Anya sat on the edge of her bed, lights burning in every room. Her reflection in the dresser mirror looked exhausted. She avoided its eyes. But when the clock ticked past midnight, she heard it again. The sound of reins snapping, horses screaming, the clash of steel. She clamped her hands over her ears. The sounds only grew louder, not muffled but internal, echoing through her skull. And beneath it, another sound, a woman's voice, fierce, anguished, rising like smoke. "Give it back." Anya's body trembled. She forced her gaze to the mirror. Her own face stared back. But as she watched, the skin along her cheek shimmered, shifting, bone deepening beneath. For a blink, the reflection wore a helm of battered silver. For a blink, the reflection's eyes burned with fury, not her own. Anya gasped and stumbled back. The mirror held still again. But she knew. Something inside it had recognized her. And it was not done. The days grew thinner. Anya stopped counting them, because each felt less like a day than a repeated scene echoes played back until they bled into one another. She woke each morning heavier, her skin damp, her heartbeat wild, and always, the sounds arrived before the Sunday, hooves striking stone, swords colliding in air, the scream of a horse tearing through her apartment's thin walls. At first, she believed the noises lived only in her head, but then the neighbors began to complain. A woman on the third floor knocked one evening, her eyes wary, her mouth tight. "Do you keep the television on all night?" Anya blinked at her. "What?" "I hear it," the woman insisted. "Metal clanging, shouting. Sometimes it's so loud I can't sleep. It has to be you. No one else on this floor makes that kind of noise." Anya stammered. I don't own a television." The woman's frown deepened. Her gaze swept across Anya's face, and for an instant her pupils shrank, as though she had seen something she couldn't name. She stepped back quickly, muttering, "Just keep it down." The door shut. Anya's stomach turned cold. She avoided mirrors now. The bathroom one she covered with a towel. The hall mirror she turned to face the wall. Her phone's front camera she smeared with tape, but reflection still found her. In shop windows, in puddles after rain, and every time, The face staring back was not hers alone. The cheekbones cut sharper. The eyes burned, brighter, harder. Sometimes a flash of metal glinted across her brow, as though a helm had slid into place. Once, in a cafe window, she saw herself entirely armored silver breastplate, dented and bloodied, hair streaming as if caught in a wind she could not feel. When she blinked, only her pale, frightened self looked back. She left the coffee untouched. Back at Elias's house, she demanded answers. You said I stole something. What does that mean? What is she doing to me? Elias's gray eyes flickered. He seemed older than before, every line etched deeper into his skin. It is not you she sees. It is herself. You opened a path when you looked too long. She is walking it now. Anya's throat tightened. Walking into me? Yes. Her laugh cracked. You sound insane. His voice sharpened. And yet you came back. She turned away, pacing. So what, she's going to replace me? Just wear me like a mask? Not replace, Elias murmured. Restore. You are not being erased. You are being rewritten. The words sank like stones in her stomach. That night, she dreamed more clearly. She was on a field under a gray sky. Smoke curled from torches stabbed into earth. Men circled her, their faces blurred, their armor glinting wet with blood. In her hands, a sword heavier than she could lift. Her arms trembled under its weight. When she dropped it, the others roared. A woman stood before her, the same woman she had glimpsed first in the mirror. Her face was hers now, exactly hers. The same mouth, the same eyes, but carved in steel, furious and unyielding. The woman leaned close, lips to her ear. You are mine now. Anya woke screaming, sheets tangled, sweat soaking her chest. In the dark of her room, her own reflection gleamed faintly in the black screen of her laptop, and the reflection was still whispering. The changes worsened. Her boss at work asked if she was ill. You look different, he said carefully, like you've lost weight in your face. Your eyes, he faltered. They almost look sharper. Strangers on the subway avoided her gaze. One man muttered "War Widow" under his breath as he passed, though she had said nothing, worn nothing to suggest it. The world seemed to be rearranging itself around her, slotting her into a role she hadn't agreed to play. She returned to Elias again, near frantic. Stop it, she demanded. Whatever this is, stop it. The old man shook his head slowly. I cannot. I warned you. The mirror opens but does not close. You pulled her memory into yourself. Now she wants it back whole. Anya's nails dug into her palms. Then what happens to me? You fade. As she rises, her voice broke into a whisper. She's in my face already. Elias looked at her long, gray, and unblinking. Then soon, she will be in your soul. That night, Anya lit every lamp in her apartment. She sat in the brightest room she could manage, clutching a knife from her kitchen drawer, though she knew it was useless. The sounds came anyway, louder than ever, hooves pounding as though on her very floor, swords clashing until sparks seemed to leap into the corners, and then the mirror in the hall, the one she had turned to face the wall, scraped, slowly, dragging itself upright. Anya's breath caught. She rose, step by shaking step. The mirror leaned against the wall as always, but now it stood uncovered, showing her face, except it was not her face. The woman stared back, armored and fierce. Her lips moved, though no sound carried. Then Anya felt it, inside her skull. Your life is a borrowed shell. I am coming home. Her vision blurred. For a moment she saw herself from the outside as though she had become the reflection, banging against the glass, trying to get out, while someone else slipped into her body. She stumbled back, screaming. The mirror darkened. The sounds died. Only her own trembling face stared back. But her cheekbone still looked sharper, and her eyes still burned. The world around Anya no longer sounded like the one she had known. Every street she walked carried the faint echo of hooves. Every metal clang, an elevator door closing, a trash can lid falling made her flinch, because in her ears it was steel on steel, sword on shield. The modern city melted into fragments of another time, banners in the wind where no banners flew, smoke in the air where there should have been exhaust. And always, in the corner of her sight, the figure waited. Not in full, not yet. Just a shoulder turning down a hallway. Just armor flashing in a shop window. Just hair darkened with sweat as she crossed a street. Anya would whip her head around, breath sharp, But there was never anyone there, only the echo of herself, stumbling forward with the wrong heartbeat inside her chest. The bathroom mirror no longer lied. She stood before it one morning, toothbrush slipping from her fingers, foam dripping down the sink. The face in the glass was not hers, not entirely. The jawline had grown angular, the eyes slanted with fury she did not own. Her lips curved downward in a soldier's grimace, and then without her moving, the reflection did. The armored woman lifted her chin, gazing down at Anya as though from a throne. "Stop," Anya whispered. But the reflection only leaned closer, and when the mouth opened, the sound came from inside Anya's own skull. "There is nothing to stop. You are only the echo. I am the voice." Anya slammed her fist against the glass. It spidered, shards trembling in their frame. For a heartbeat, she thought blood had spilled, red streaming down the cracks, then blinked. And it was only toothpaste. Her knuckles ached. Her face still burned with eyes not hers. She ran to Elias that evening, half mad with terror. The old man looked worse than she remembered, as though her visits drained him too. His hands shook as he lit the single lamp. "You waited too long," he rasped. "Tell me how to end it." Her voice broke. "You must know something. You've kept that mirror all these years." Elias's gaze was heavy, as if even looking at her required strength. "Every seer before me has kept it, yes, but not one escaped it." Anya's breath hitched. "Those who glance, those who pass safe enough, but those who look deeply," his lips trembled, "they are never themselves again." Her legs weakened beneath her. "So that's it? I just disappear?" Elias's voice dropped to a whisper. "You are already disappearing." The proof came the next day. Anya passed a cafe window, her reflection thrown in glass beside strangers. She stopped cold. They were staring at her, not the people inside, but the reflections themselves. Their heads turned, one by one, until every set of eyes fixed on her. Not on Anya, on the woman rising inside her. Her throat closed. She stumbled back, bumping into a man on the sidewalk. He cursed, then froze, his expression slack. "You," his lips trembled. "You look like her." Anya's pulse hammered. "Like who?" But he only shook his head wildly, backing into the crowd, as though he had spoken more truth than he wished. That night, sleep abandoned her. She lay in bed with lights on, but the battlefield sounds grew louder, closer. The clash of swords rattled her window panes. The neigh of horses thundered in her chest. She pressed the pillow over her ears until her skull throbbed, and then footsteps, heavy, armored, pacing across her floor. Her breath stilled. She turned her head slowly. The woman stood at the foot of her bed, full, whole, armored into blood-dripping shadows. Her face was Anya's now, but colder, harder, centuries older. Anya's scream caught in her throat. She scrambled back, spine slamming the headboard. The figure stepped closer. The air bent with her presence, iron filling the lungs, smoke clogging the nostrils. "Your blood remembers what your eyes have stolen." The voice hissed inside her mind. "Do not resist me. You are only the vessel. I am the command." Anya wept, shaking her head. No, I'm real. This is my life." "You can't." But the woman raised her hand, and in the air between them shimmered the mirror's surface, summoned from nothing. The glass rippled, swallowing the light. Anya's own reflection fought to appear, but it was weak, faint, flickering. The soldier's reflection was strong, whole, eternal. She leaned close, her lips brushing the glass. "Tomorrow, there will be no difference." Anya woke, collapsed on the floor, morning sun bleeding across her skin. Her limbs were heavy, her eyes ached. She dragged herself to the mirror in the hallway, and for the first time, she did not know which face belonged to her. The last week of Anya's life, if life it could be called, unfolded, like a fever dream stretched across waking hours. She no longer distinguished day from night. The battlefield marched with her wherever she went. When she walked the street, she heard the rasp of swords behind office windows. When she poured water into a glass, it smelled of iron, tasted of blood. When strangers passed her, they glanced once and quickly away, as though their eyes had touched something too sharp to name. And in her own reflection, she dwindled. At first, it was subtle, the flicker of a different mouth, the shadow of a helm across her brow. But by the end, her reflection belonged to someone else entirely. The woman, the commander, the memory with teeth. One night she returned to Elias, hollow-eyed, trembling. "You have to fix this," she rasped. "I can't hold her anymore. She's already in me." The old man's face sagged with grief. "There is no fixing, only enduring. The mirror never gives what it takes." Anya slammed her fist against the table, voice breaking. "Then what am I supposed to do? Let her kill me? Let her use me?" Elias's hands clenched on his knees. His eyes softened, the only mercy left in them. "Child, she does not kill you. She replaces you. She steps into the shell you leave. That is her victory. That is her revenge." Anya staggered back, her chest hollow. "So what's left of me?" His voice was nearly a whisper. "Glass, the same as all who came before." Her breath shuddered. For a moment she swore she felt the weight of chains around her wrists, the crush of soil above her, the sting of steel in her side. She wasn't Anya anymore. She was memory. She was the grave. She fled before Elias could see her weep. The final night came without warning. She was standing in her kitchen, light humming above. When the world shifted, the hum became a low war horn. The refrigerator's groan became the bellow of horses. The light overhead flickered and split into torches burning in the dark. Her apartment dissolved. Walls bled away. The floor turned to soil, thick and damp beneath her feet. She stood in the field again, the one from her dreams, and across it marched the woman. Silver armor dented and dark with blood, hair streaming with sweat. Her face was both hers and not hers, twin images folding into one. Anya fell to her knees. "Please," she whispered. "Don't take me." The woman smiled. "Not cruel, not kind, only inevitable. You were never yours to begin with." She raised her hand, and the mirror opened in the air like a wound. Its surface glistened black, endless. Anya saw herself within, but faint, pale, receding. "Wait," she cried, scrambling forward. "I don't want to go," but her reflection only mouthed the words, no sound escaping, and then it was gone. When Elias found the apartment days later, the lights still burned. The bed was unmade, the coffee cold, but the mirrors told another story. In the bathroom glass, a woman in armor stared back. Not Anya. Never Anya. In the hallway mirror, the same face, eyes fierce, jaw set, as if ready for command. And if Elias looked long enough, behind her, faintly, he could see another shape. A young woman's silhouette, blurred hands pressed desperately against the inside of the glass. Mouth moving soundlessly, begging. By spring, Ashford Hollow whispered of a stranger in town. A tall woman with a face like carved stone, eyes burning as though lit from within. She passed rarely, but when she did, dogs cowered and shutters closed. The townsfolk said she looked like she had stepped out of another century, and no one noticed that Anya Harper was never seen again. The mirror remained in Elias's house, its frame black as ever, its surface calm. But at night, when the candles guttered, he swore he heard it breathing, and if he leaned too close, he could almost make out the faintest whisper of a girl's voice, trapped just beyond reach. "Please, I'm still here." The mirror, as always, remembered, and what it remembered, it kept. The figure by the lake. You don't have to believe me. Most people don't, and I've stopped trying to convince them. But I can't sleep without telling it, without laying it down somewhere outside my own head. Maybe if I say it enough times, it'll stop replaying every time I close my eyes. So this is what happened at Deep Lake. That's what the locals call it. It has an older name, too, some native word I couldn't pronounce even if I tried, but everyone in the little Oregon town just says, Deep Lake. Not because it's large. It isn't. You can walk the shoreline in less than an hour, but the water drops fast. A few feet from the edge, the ground falls away into blackness, deeper than anyone's ever measured. Kids throw rocks in and wait for the splash. It never comes. Not the way you expect. The sound is swallowed, dampened, as though the water has lungs of its own. I should have listened to the stories. I'd heard them growing up. A girl pulled under by invisible hands. A fisherman who went in after his net and never came back. A dog that leapt into the shallows chasing a stick and vanished without a ripple. They say the lake keeps what it takes. But when you're 20, you laugh at ghost stories. You laugh with your friends. You drink cheap beer. You tell yourself you're braver than the kids who grew up too scared to swim there. That's what we thought when we set up camp. It was early June, the kind of day where the air still carried a bite from spring, but the sun promised warmth if you waited long enough. Our group wasn't big, 5 of us. Mark and Jenna, who'd been dating since high school. Tyler, who thought of himself as our ringleader, always the one to dare us. Me and my best friend Kayla. We drove up with kayaks strapped to the roof, bags full of snacks, a cooler rattling with ice. By the time we reached the clearing near the lake's edge, the sky had turned soft gray, clouds swelling over the ocean miles away. You could smell the salt even this far inland, tangled with pine and damp earth. The lake lay still, a sheet of black glass broken only by the occasional ripple. It looked less like water than an eye, unblinking, reflecting nothing back. Perfect, Tyler said, clapping his hands. No one here but us. No one ever was. The locals avoided the place, muttering about accidents, about sounds in the night. But for us, that was the attraction. Privacy, mystery, something to make the photos look dangerous. We pitched 2 tents beneath the trees, close enough to the fire pit but far enough that we could still see the lake through the branches. As the sun slid lower, the air thickened with the smell of wood smoke and wet pine needles. And that was when I first noticed it. The quiet, not just the absence of people. The absence of everything. No frogs, no crickets, no birds rustling the canopy. Only the low lap of water against the shore, as if the lake itself were breathing, slow and patient. I told myself I was imagining it. That night we built a fire, the kind you see in summer ads. Sparks rising like fireflies, laughter bouncing between the trees. We roasted hot dogs, drank until the stars blurred. Someone pulled out a speaker, tinny music bleeding into the dark. Scary story time, Tyler declared, raising his beer like a torch. Come on, we can't camp at Deep Lake without one, Jenna groaned. Seriously? You're gonna try to spook us? We're literally sitting at the most haunted pond in Oregon. And you think we need more nightmare fuel? That's the point, Tyler grinned. Okay, here's one. They say a girl drowned here back in the 60s. Car accident. She swam up for help, but nobody heard her. So now, if you're quiet enough, you can still hear her calling. Like, right out there. He jerked his thumb toward the water. The fire hissed as a log collapsed, sparks spiraling up. Kayla nudged me, rolling her eyes. He's full of it, but something in her voice wasn't as certain as her face. I smiled weakly, but my gaze drifted past the flames, to the lake surface. It was flat, too flat, and I swear I saw a shadow move beneath it. Not a fish. Too big, too slow. A shape stretched long like a body drifting. I blinked, and it was gone. Later, when the others crawled into the tents, I stayed by the fire. Sleep wouldn't come. The stories gnawed at me. The stillness gnawed at me. And the lake, it waited. I walked down to the shore, toes sinking into the damp sand. The fire's glow fell short, leaving me wrapped in moonlight. The water looked darker than the sky, a mouth without end. Something shifted beneath it, a ripple. I leaned forward, squinting. That was when I saw it again. The figure. It hovered just below the surface, too defined to be an illusion. Arms outstretched, legs drifting, hair waving like kelp. My breath stilled, my skin prickled. I told myself it was a trick of light, a fish, a log, anything. But then it moved, not with the current, not with the ripple. It moved like a person, and it was watching me. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough for the fire behind me to die low. Long enough for the night to feel heavier on my shoulders. I thought about waking the others, but the thought of saying it out loud, "There's someone in the water," terrified me more than silence. So I stepped back, forcing myself to look away, to return to the tents. But even as I turned, I felt it eyes under the surface, following, and when I lay in my sleeping bag, I could still hear the water lapping. Not random, not natural, rhythmic, like something treading, waiting, just beneath. That was the first night, the night before everything broke. I can still feel the sand cold under my feet, the air sharp with salt and pine. I can still see the black sheet of water, unbroken, holding its secrets too tight. And I can still feel the moment I realized the figure in Deep Lake wasn't just drifting, it was listening. I should have left that morning. I told myself I would pack the tent, make up some excuse, drive until the trees thinned and the ocean air tasted like freedom. But when the sun came up, and the others laughed about burnt marshmallows and hangovers, I stayed, because part of me needed to see it again. That's the worst part of all this, the wanting. The day blurred in its usual way. We took the kayaks out, paddling across water blacker than sky. I kept my eyes on the surface, waiting for the shimmer of movement. Once, I thought I saw bubbles rise too far from shore, but no one else noticed. "Relax," Tyler called, his paddle slicing clean. "You're wound tighter than Jenna's mom." I forced a laugh, but my grip on the paddle whitened. Every splash of water against the hull made my skin twitch. By dusk, we dragged the kayaks back, shoulders aching. The fire snapped again, sparks biting at the dark. Beer cans clattered. Music whined from the little speaker, but I couldn't relax. The silence beyond the fire was heavier tonight. No frogs, no owls, no rustle of branches, only the lake breathing. When Kayla asked if I wanted to take a walk, I shook my head. "I'm fine here." But when she curled into her sleeping bag and the fire thinned to embers, my body betrayed me. I stood. I walked. I followed the sand's curve down to the water, like the night before, like I'd been called. The moon was brighter, sharp against the water. The lake looked endless, a polished obsidian mirror. My breath showed in the air, and then the ripple came. At first, just a tremor, then wider, rolling across the black. I froze. My heart clawed against my ribs. It rose slowly, impossibly, just beneath the surface. A figure, arms out, hair drifting, eyes open. This time I couldn't pretend it was a trick. It was human. I stumbled a step back, but the sand sucked at my shoes. My chest heaved. "No," I whispered. "Not real. Not real." The water lapped higher, as if reaching. I should have run. God, I should have run. But I stepped closer. The figure tilted its head, and then it moved. Not floating, not drifting, moving, straight toward me. I gasped, cold air stabbing my throat. The water broke with a sound too loud for the quiet night. A hand shot up, black with silt, slick with algae. It clamped around my ankle. I screamed. The sound bounced off the trees, small and useless. The grip was ice. It burned with its cold. Fingers dug into bone as if they had been waiting. I kicked, stumbling, falling to my knees. Water swallowed my shins. The hand yanked, hard. My body pitched forward. The lake opened like a mouth. I clawed at the sand, nails filling with grit, dragging lines that broke off too soon. Another pull, harder. My leg vanished beneath the surface. The water roared in my ears. Not just water voices, 1,000 muffled voices, pressing against my skull, filling me with words I couldn't understand. My chest sized, and then the sound. At first I thought it was a bird, a harsh, broken quack that tore through the night. But it was wrong, too deep, too guttural, too close to a scream. The grip faltered. For a fraction of a second, the hand loosened. I kicked free, thrashing backward, dragging myself across the sand. My lungs screamed for air. My chest burned. The surface smoothed too fast. The ripples died. The lake lay still, reflecting the moon, as though nothing had happened. I collapsed on the shore, shaking so hard my teeth clicked. My ankle throbbed where the fingers had bruised it, purple shadows already spreading under the skin. And then I saw him, standing a few yards away, outlined by the moon. An old man, tall, thin, his clothes hanging like wet laundry. His eyes clouded, white, blind. He leaned on a stick, his head tilted toward me. "Don't go near it again," he said, his voice brittle as reeds. I stared, chest heaving. What was that, did you see?" His mouth twisted. "I don't see. Haven't in years. But I know what's in that water." My throat closed. Then, what saved me? That sound? The old man's lips curled, not quite a smile. "The duck won't save you. Not twice." The wind stirred. The lake shivered, and the old man turned his blind eyes back toward the black water, as if he could still see something moving beneath it. I didn't tell the others. How could I? If I had, they would have laughed. Or worse, they would have wanted proof. Tyler would have dared me to go back in. Jenna would have rolled her eyes. Kayla would have tried to comfort me, but ended up questioning every detail. So I lied. I said I slipped. I said the sand gave way, and I panicked. They teased me for being clumsy, and I forced a laugh until my throat hurt. But all day, I felt the bruise on my ankle. Black fingerprints burned into my skin, proof that something had held me. Something with weight. And all day, I saw him. The old man. Not near camp, never where the others could notice, but in glimpses, standing at the tree line when I fetched firewood, paused on the ridge above the water as we paddled, head tilted toward the lake, as though he were listening for something no one else could hear. Once, when I dared to glance longer, he seemed to turn toward me. Though his eyes were blind, I swear he knew exactly where I stood. That night, I didn't sleep. The others collapsed early, tired from paddling, bellies full of smoke and beer. Their snores wove through the tent fabric. I lay awake, listening. The lake was never silent now. At first, just the lap of water against shore. Then, deeper, the sound beneath sound. A ripple that didn't belong to wind. A breath that wasn't mine. And then the quack. Low, guttural, broken. The same that had saved me. It echoed across the surface, carrying too far for such a small creature. It curdled my blood. I pressed my hands over my ears. I tried to block it, but the sound wasn't outside anymore. It was in me, vibrating in my ribs, rattling my teeth. Quachi. A duck should never sound like that. I thought of the old man's words. The duck won't save you. Not twice. What if it wasn't a warning? What if it was a promise? By morning I looked wrecked. Kayla frowned when she saw my face. Dark circles under my eyes, lips cracked. You okay? Didn't sleep, I muttered. She squeezed my hand. Then tonight you're not staying up. I'll make sure. I nodded, grateful, but deep down I knew it didn't matter. The lake had already marked me. That afternoon we went for another paddle. The sun beat down, hot enough to burn skin, but the water remained cold, dark, too still. Halfway across, I saw it. Ariple farahet. Too perfect, too chantered. The others kept talking, their voices bouncing off the water, but I couldn't hear a word. My ears filled with that other sound, the hiss of bubbles rising from depths too deep, the faint knock of something against the hull, and when I glanced over the edge, I saw her. Not the shadow this time, not the vague smear of movement. A woman's face, pale, eyes wide open, hair fanned like ink. She was staring up at me. My scream tore out, tipping the kayak. The water swallowed me whole, cold, deeper than I thought possible. My limbs flailed, but something brushed past, skin soft as rotted cloth, fingers grazing my side. Mine. A voice hissed in my skull. I kicked, thrashed, broke the surface, gasping. Tyler was laughing, reaching to pull me upright. Jesus, Sarah, relax. You scared the hell out of us. I stared at him, dripping, choking, unable to form words. He hadn't seen. None of them had. But I had, and she was still down there. That evening, as the sun collapsed behind the trees, the old man came again. I found him at the shoreline, his stick planted in the sand. His white eyes turned toward me before I even spoke. You felt her, he said. My chest tightened. What is she? His mouth twisted. She drowned, long before your parents were born. A girl, pulled by the current, claimed by the lake. It never gave her back. I swallowed. So she's haunting it. No. His voice cracked, like an old log splitting. The lake keeps what it takes. She isn't haunting. She's part of it. She is its hunger, its voice. I shivered, remembering the whispers under the water. And the duck? I asked, trembling. That sound, what is it? His lips curled in something like pity. You think it saved you? You think it's a warning? No, child. It's a lure. It mocks what's living. It calls the dead closer. That sound doesn't belong to a bird. It belongs to the lake. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. All this time I thought something had pulled me free. But no, it had only been playing. That night I dreamt of feathers. Black, slick, soaked in water. They stuck to my skin, pinning me down, pressing my face beneath the surface. I woke choking, ankle burning where the bruise had darkened, spreading like ink. And in the silence of the tent, I heard it again. The quack, not outside, not across the lake, right at my ear. I told myself I wouldn't go back. After the dream, after the sound in my ear, after the bruise that now climbed my calf like spreading ink, I swore I would stay away from the shoreline. But some promises rot the moment you make them. By nightfall, I was walking down the sand again. My legs moved without asking me. Every step dragged me closer, as though the earth itself had tilted, and I was sliding toward the water. The lake lay waiting. Moonlight carved it into glass. No ripples, no wind. Just a black sheet that reflected nothing, as if the world ended at its surface. Behind me, the campfire crackled faint, muffled by trees. The laughter of my friends sounded far away, distorted, like voices heard underwater. Here, only the lake spoke, and it spoke with silence. At first, nothing stirred. I stood at the edge, toes digging into damp sand, forcing myself to breathe. Then, the ripple, a circle blooming outward. Too perfect. Then another, and then she rose. Not fully, not yet just beneath the surface. A woman's shape, pale, stretched by water, hair flowing upward like black weeds. Her arms reached toward me, fingers long, broken by the current. Her eyes were open. Her eyes were mine. I stumbled back, choking on air. But the water surged forward, lapping higher, as though eager. The bruise on my leg burned, hot against the cold night. And then suddenly it wasn't a bruise. It was a handprint. Dark fingers pressed around my ankle, closing tighter. I screamed as the sand collapsed, sucking me forward. Water soaked my knees, my waist, and then she broke the surface. She rose chest high, dripping black water, her body more shadow than flesh. Armor glinted faintly, rusted silver catching moonlight. Her hair clung to her face, but her mouth curved in something like a smile. Mine, she hissed. The voice wasn't sound. It was vibration. It rattled my teeth, filled my bones. Her hand clamped around my wrist, colder than anything I had ever felt. My breath stopped. The world tilted. The lake opened beneath us. She pulled. I thrashed, clawing at her arm, but my fingers slid off slick skin. My other hand caught nothing but water, as though the world had turned liquid. My head went under. Black swallowed everything. In the depths, sound twisted. Horses shrieked. Swords clanged. Voices screamed in languages I didn't know. Bubbles rose, bursting against my skin like fingers. The woman's face hovered inches from mine, her hair tangling with mine, her eyes endless and furious. And then the quack, that guttural, broken sound split the water itself. The woman flinched. Her grip loosened. Something yanked me upward. I broke the surface, coughing, gasping, clawing for air. And there he was, the old man, standing knee-deep in the lake, his stick planted firm, his blind eyes wide under the moon. His hand, strong despite its tremor, grabbed my arm. "Not yet," he rasped. "She can't have you yet." I sobbed, kicking, letting him drag me toward shore. But behind us, the water heaved. She was rising again, full. Her whole body broke the surface, taller than she had any right to be, dripping lakeweed and shadow, armor strapped across her chest, rusted and cracked. Her mouth opened wider, wider, until it seemed it would split her face. From it poured the sound of rushing water and screams. The lake itself was screaming through her. The old man shoved me onto the sand. I sprawled, coughing, lake water spilling from my mouth. He planted himself between me and the figure, stick raised like a useless spear. "You can't have her," he barked. "Not this one." The woman's hollow eyes fixed on him, and she laughed. It was a sound I'll never forget. It cracked like ice, rippled like the quack, but deeper, bending, mocking. "You," she hissed. "You still guard. Blind fool. How many years will you keep them from me?" The old man trembled but stood firm. "As long as I breathe." Her head tilted, hair dripping into the sand. "Then breathe faster." The lake surged forward, swallowing his legs, his waist. He grunted, planting his stick, trying to hold ground. "Run," he shouted at me. "Get away from here." But I couldn't move. My legs shook, my chest burned. My eyes locked on the woman's face, my own face staring back at me through centuries of water. The old man roared, striking his stick against the surface. The quack erupted again, louder, splitting the night. The woman reeled, her form flickering, breaking into ripples. For a moment, I thought she would vanish, but instead she turned her head and smiled at me. The old man collapsed onto the sand, gasping, trembling. His blind eyes rolled, his breath rattling. I crawled toward him, choking. What is she?" His hand caught my wrist with surprising strength. You saw her, he wheezed. Now she sees you. You can't hide from her anymore. I shook my head, tears spilling. No, I don't want this. His grip tightened. Want has nothing to do with it. Once the lake touches you, it never lets go. His words hung heavy, thicker than the night. And when I turned back toward the water, the surface lay still again, flat, silent, as if nothing had happened. But I knew she was still there, waiting. I should have run that night, should have taken my car and the cracked roads out of town, should have left my friends behind and never looked back. But I didn't. I stayed, and that was the end of my choices. The old man sat on the sand beside me, his breath rattling like reeds in the wind, his blind eyes fixed on nothing, and yet seeing too much. And I waited with him for the dawn, both of us silent, both of us listening to the lake breathe. When morning came, the others found me pale and soaked, shivering with fever, but I said nothing of what had happened. I let them believe I had slipped again, that I was clumsy and tired and perhaps still drunk, because what else could I say? That a drowned woman had worn my face and tried to claim me. They would have laughed, or worse, they would have followed me down to the water to see for themselves. All day I felt her gaze beneath the surface. When the sun struck the lake, instead of sparkle there was shadow, as if something vast swam just below, pacing, circling, patient. I could hear her in the hush between voices, in the hush between heartbeats, whispering not with words but with weight, a promise that she had not forgotten. By dusk I knew she would come again. The bruise on my ankle had spread higher, black and green climbing like ivy up my leg, and every step felt tethered, like I was already bound to the water. The others laughed by the fire, their faces flickering in orange light, but they sounded far away. Kayla touched my hand, told me to rest, told me to eat, but her words slid past like smoke. The only voice I could hear was the one in the lake, humming low, coaxing, steady as a lullaby. When I rose, none of them noticed. When I walked, none of them followed. I slipped between the trees as though I had done it 1,000 times before, the path already carved in my bones. The air was heavy, and the closer I came, the more the world fell away until there was only the black expanse waiting, still as glass, patient as a mouth that had never needed to open wide to swallow. She was there, before I reached the edge, rising slowly, her form clearer now than ever, a woman armored and broken, hair drifting like weeds, eyes wide and pale. She was not separate from the water. She was the water, shaped into memory, shaped into hunger. Come, she whispered, though her lips did not move. And I went. The sand softened under my feet. The bruise on my ankle pulsed. And when I stepped into the shallows, the cold surged higher than my knees, higher than my waist, a weight pulling me forward with the gentleness of inevitability. Behind me a voice broke, thin and trembling. The old man. He had followed after all. Child, he called, his stick scraping against stone. Don't answer her. I turned and saw him staggering down the slope, blind eyes milky, his face lined with years of fighting a war he had already lost. He reached for me, his hand shaking in the dark, but her hand was already on mine, cold, deep, endless, and it felt like peace. The old man cried out, his words splintering into the night. She'll keep you, the way she's kept them all. Don't let her take you. But I was already gone. The water rose higher, the voices thickened, and I heard the sound again, the broken quack, the call of something not bird and not beast, the voice of the lake itself. It shuddered through me, through him, through the trees, and then there was nothing but black. I do not remember drowning. I do not remember struggling. I remember only sinking into a silence that was not silence, into arms that were not arms, into a darkness that was not empty but full, fuller than the world above could ever be. The next morning the camp was quiet. My friends woke to find my sleeping bag empty, my shoes by the fire, my clothes folded neatly, though none of them remembered me folding them. They searched the shoreline. They called my name, but the lake reflected only sky. The old man watched from the trees, leaning on his stick, his face set in sorrow. He did not call out. He did not explain. He only listened to the water breathe. And if you had stood close enough beside him, you might have heard it too. A faint voice beneath the surface, muffled by depth, rising with the ripples. It was my voice, not screaming, singing, a lullaby made of water and silence, carrying out across the lake, promising that one day someone else would hear it too. The dream of the serpent. The first thing they noticed was the smell, not dust that would have been easier. Dust is dry, fragile, and familiar. This was heavier, clinging, like damp cloth left too long in a cellar. It seeped out of the walls, out of the floorboards, out of the plaster itself, a mixture of earth and mildew, sharp iron and something faintly sweet, as if the house had been chewing on roots for 100 years and only now let the scent out. Marianne wrinkled her nose, one hand tightening on the cardboard box she carried through the threshold. God, she muttered, it's like the whole place has been sweating. Her husband Paul gave a tired laugh, setting his own box down on the warped floor. The wood creaked beneath his weight. Old houses have old smells. We'll air it out. Their 2 children ran past them, shoes thudding. The sound echoed strangely, traveling too far, as if the walls were hollow. The younger one, Daniel, called back over his shoulder, "Can we see the backyard? I heard there's a well." Marianne frowned. "Not until we've checked it first. Old wells aren't safe." But already their daughter Lydia had pressed her face to the back window. The glass was smudged and foggy, but through it the yard stretched long and uneven, grass waist-high, trees bowed with Spanish moss, and in the middle, like a black coin, sat the stone ring of a well. The wind breathed across it, low and steady, and the sound carried into the house. Not a whistle, not a moan, a sigh, drawn up from depths too deep to name. Lydia pressed her palms to the glass. She thought she heard it whisper her name. The house settled around them with the unease of something waking from sleep. Doors did not close cleanly. They rasped against swollen frames. Windows stuck half open. The ceiling groaned when anyone walked upstairs, dust spiraling down in soft gray curls. By evening, Marianne had lit every lamp. The bulbs glowed weakly, their light dulled by the walls as though eaten. Shadows clung stubbornly, gathering in the corners, layering the hallways. The family ate dinner at the long pine table left by the previous owners. The surface was scarred, darkened with age. Faint grooves like claw marks dug across its length. Daniel traced them with his fork until Marianne slapped his hand gently and told him to eat. Afterward, when the children went to bed, Paul stepped onto the back porch. The air was thick, hotter than the house. Crickets should have been screaming this late in Georgia summer, but the yard held its breath. Only the well spoke, the wind funneling down its throat and rising back strange like words just out of reach. Paul shivered and told himself it was only air. That night the dreams began. Marianne woke with a strangled gasp, her hands clutching the sheets. The room smelled stronger in the dark, damp earth and bitter iron. She had been running in her dream, bare feet sinking in mud, something green-faced and grinning close behind. Its fingers had brushed her shoulder, cold and slick. And then, just as it lunged, something vast had moved between them. A body that wasn't human, scales gleaming like black glass. A serpent, coiling, enormous, its eyes gold and pitiless, its jaws opened wide, and with a sound like stone grinding against stone, it swallowed the green-faced thing whole. Marianne lay trembling, the phantom hiss still in her ears. She reached for Paul, but he too twitched in his sleep, breath ragged, as if lost in the same chase. From the other rooms came muffled cries, the children. All 4 had dreamed the same dream. None of them spoke of it at breakfast. But the silence at the table was thick as tar. On the second day, Marianne found the well. She had meant to ignore it, to keep the children away. But something pulled her feet across the uneven grass. Weeds rasped against her calves. Thorns snagged her jeans. The closer she came, the more the air cooled, as if she were walking into shadow. The stones of the well were rough, black with moss, their mortar crumbling. No cover shielded its mouth. She peered down and saw nothing, only darkness, smooth and unbroken, as if the world ended there. The wind rose, sighing upward. She thought she heard words in it. Low, slow, curling. Mine, mine. Her stomach lurched. She stumbled back, hands shaking. But when she returned to the house, Lydia was at the window again, watching. That night the dreams returned, heavier. Paul woke drenched in sweat, heart hammering. He had seen the green-faced demon closer this time. Its skin was slick, its teeth too sharp, its voice thick with laughter. It had chased him across fields that never ended, whispering his sins, calling him by name. And then the serpent again, massive, scaled, coiling around his body. Its eyes burned into his. It did not speak, but it felt like judgment. Beside him, Marianne sat upright in bed, breath shallow. She whispered, "It saved me. I think it saved me." From down the hall came the children's voices, crying in their sleep. Paul pulled Marianne close, but in the silence that followed, he heard something new. A scrape, from the backyard, from the well. In the morning, Paul went outside, shovel in hand. He told himself he only wanted to clear weeds, to make the yard safe for the kids. But his path led him to the well. He stood over it, breath shallow, sweat running down his back. The wind sighed upward, and in it he swore he heard a hiss. The dreams did not fade. By the third night they came stronger, tangled with heat and shadow, until it was difficult to tell where one person's dream ended and another began. Marianne would jolt upright at midnight, her breath ragged, and in the same moment she could hear Lydia down the hall, whimpering through clenched teeth. Paul would toss and turn, muttering words he could not remember when he woke, while Daniel cried into his pillow until his throat was raw. The dreams were always the same. The house was gone. The land was endless, a field of mud, stretched in every direction. The horizon dark with storm. The thing that chased them was faster every night. Its skin gleamed with a wet green sheen, its face half man, half corpse. It grinned wide enough to split its cheeks, showing teeth too sharp for a human mouth. Its voice was thick, bubbling as though spoken through water. "Mine," it said again and again, and the sound rattled their bones. And then the serpent would come, at first only a flicker, scales brushing against the mud, coils the size of tree trunks sliding beneath the earth. Then clearer, rising, massive, its body filling the horizon, its hiss shaking the storm itself. It would coil around the family, its scales cool, its eyes burning gold, and the demon would stop. Every time, it never attacked, never fought. It simply held them in its massive embrace, a wall of scale and muscle. While the green-faced thing screamed and clawed but could not break through, they woke shaking but alive, and though none of them dared to speak of it in the morning, they all knew. They had shared the same dream. By day, the house was no comfort. Marianne began to notice the smell more strongly, thick earth and faint sweetness, like the air after rain mixed with rotting fruit. She scrubbed the walls with vinegar, opened every window, but the odor only grew. Paul walked the yard with unease. He swore the weeds near the well shifted on their own, as though a draft of air pushed up from beneath. When he leaned close, listening, the sighing deepened into something sharper. Not wind, not words, a hiss. The children grew pale, exhausted. Lydia would sit by the window for hours, staring at the well, her lips moving in whispers no one could hear. Daniel's drawings filled with shapes, circles coiled into circles, black lines rising like scales. When Marianne asked him what they were, he said, "The snake that lives under the house." Her blood ran cold. "Who told you that?" Daniel shrugged. "I dreamed it." He said he was watching. That night Marianne could not resist. She lay awake, listening to the floorboards creak, as if something moved below. At last she rose, slipping her robe over her shoulders, and went to the back door. The yard was silvered with moonlight, the grass whispering as if bent by a passing body. The well sat black and patient. She walked to it slowly, the earth soft beneath her bare feet, her breath clouding faint in the summer heat. When she leaned over the edge, the darkness seemed alive. The wind rose, sighing up through the stones. But it was not wind. It was breath, and beneath it, a shimmer. Two eyes, gold and unblinking, far below, opening as if woken from sleep. Marianne stumbled back, hand over her mouth. The air burned with the scent of damp scales, metallic and sharp. From behind her, a child's voice whispered, "Don't be afraid. He's protecting us." She spun. Lydia stood at the porch, her nightgown billowing. Her face was calm, too calm for a girl her age. Marianne grabbed her arm, dragging her back inside, whispering, "Never come here alone. Never." But when she looked back once more, the eyes were gone. The dreams thickened after that. Paul dreamed of standing at the well, looking down and the serpent rising, vast and endless, its coils circling the house, its body stretching farther than sight. He felt its scales brush his skin, cool and ancient. And though terror gripped him, he also felt a strange safety, as if the creature had wrapped itself not to crush but to shield. Marianne dreamed of the green-faced demon closer than ever, its claws tearing at her skin. But before pain bloomed, the serpent struck. Its jaws opened wide, fangs like polished stone, and the demon shrieked as it was swallowed into the dark. And the children dreamed too. In the morning, Daniel spoke of the serpent curling around his bed, whispering without words, keeping the shadows at bay. Lydia said she rode on its back across fields of mud, the demon chasing but never catching. It was no longer only fear. There was awe too. Marianne began to believe the serpent was more than dream. At breakfast, she whispered to Paul, "It's not hurting us. It's saving us. Every night." Paul frowned, rubbing his temples. "That thing is no savior. It's just another nightmare." But even as he said it, his voice faltered, because part of him, too, had felt the shield of those coils, the weight of ancient protection. The house groaned around them, the smell of earth stronger, the sigh of the well louder. And when the serpent came to them again that night, its eyes blazing gold, Marianne whispered into the dream, "What are you?" For the first time, the answer came, not in words, but in a voice older than language, a voice that thrummed through her bones. "I am the one who guards." She woke gasping, tears on her face, her chest full of something heavy and strange. The house creaked around her, the well sighed outside, and for the first time she felt not just fear, but the certainty that something immense and ancient had chosen them. By the end of the week, the house felt less like shelter and more like a mouth. Marianne found herself listening for the sigh of the well even when she stood inside, trying to cook, trying to fold laundry, trying to pretend life was ordinary. Daniel drew nothing but coils. Lydia whispered names in her sleep. Paul walked the halls at night, staring at the walls as though he heard footsteps pacing behind them. On the 7th morning, the knock came, soft at first, then firmer. Marianne opened the door to find a woman standing barefoot on the porch. Her hair was dark, braided with twine and small bones. Her clothes were plain but old-fashioned, homespun linen dyed deep brown. Around her neck hung a small pouch, tied with cord. Her eyes, sharp as wet stone, fixed on Marianne's face, as if they had known each other long before this moment. "You've been dreaming," the woman said. Marianne froze. "How did you—" "They called me," the woman said simply. She stepped past Marianne into the house without waiting for welcome, her gaze sweeping the dim hall, the cracked plaster, the shadows clinging at the corners. Paul came from the kitchen, frowning. "Excuse me, who are you?" The woman turned to him. "You don't need my name. I am here because the serpent let me here." The word landed heavy, sharp. "Serpent." Paul's throat tightened. He swallowed hard. "You know about it?" The woman's eyes softened, almost pitying. "It watches. It guards. It has for longer than this land has had your family's name." Marianne's knees weakened. "Then it's real. Not just a dream." The woman finished for her. They sat at the long pine table. The children hovered near, wide-eyed, their breaths shallow. The woman spread her palms flat, fingers long and scarred. "This house was not empty when you came," she said. "It carries a shadow, a soul that never left." Paul frowned. "You mean the man who died here?" The woman nodded slowly. "A man of greed, cruel to his kin. He met his death near the well, but his body did not sink the way it should have. His spirit clung, face twisted by anger, skin green with rot. That is what you see in your dreams." Daniel whimpered. Lydia took his hand. Marianne whispered, "And the serpent?" The woman's eyes brightened, but not with joy, with reverence. "Older than the house, older than the man, older than the well itself. It is no beast. It is a guardian, a god of coil and earth. It has slept beneath this land since before men wrote down their prayers. Its body circles the roots of this house. Its breath rises in the wind you hear. Its hiss shakes the walls when you lie awake." Her voice fell softer. "It is why you still wake at all. Without it, the green-faced one would have taken you already." The words hung heavy in the air. Paul rubbed his face. "So what are we supposed to do? Live with it? Pretend everything's fine?" The woman's expression darkened. "Nothing here is fine. The serpent protects, but it does not heal. The rot remains. The man's shadow grows restless. You feel it in your dreams because it presses harder every night." She leaned closer. And the serpent cannot rise forever. Gods fall silent. Guardians grow weary. Marian's voice cracked. Then what happens when it stops? The woman looked toward the window, toward the yard where the well sat in silence. Then you will be left with nothing but him. That night, the dreams deepened. Marianne ran through the endless field again, mud sucking her feet, the demon's laugh in her ears. But this time the serpent did not come at once. The green-faced man grew closer, his claws scratching at her skin, his breath thick as swamp water. His voice thundered, "Mine, mine." Her knees buckled. She fell, hands sinking into mud, the stench of rot filling her nose. And then the ground trembled. The serpent surged upward, scales shaking the horizon, eyes gold as fire. It coiled around her body, its weight crushing but protective. The demon shrieked, throwing itself against the barrier. But the serpent held, and in that moment, Marianne felt words inside her skull, clearer than ever. I was whole once. I was worshipped. But time has broken me. What you dream is only what remains. She woke gasping, tears on her face. Her body ached as if she had been held by something vast, something real. Paul sat up right beside her, sweat shining on his chest. "It told me the same," he whispered. From down the hall, the children cried in unison. By morning, Marianne found the woman waiting in the kitchen, as though she had never left. She sat at the table, hands folded, eyes weary. "You felt it," she said. "You know now. The serpent is not what it was. It is broken, split, its head severed long ago." Paul's heart pounded. "Then it can't protect us." The woman's voice was low, almost sorrowful. "It can delay, but it cannot win. Not anymore." The children clung to Marianne's robe. Daniel's voice was small. "I saw the snake die." "And," Lydia whispered, "I saw its head crack." The woman reached across the table, her fingers curling like roots. "Then you see the truth. This house is not yours. Leave it. Leave before the green-faced man grows strong enough to step from dream into waking." Her blind gaze, or was it sighted after all, fixed on Marianne, because when he does, the serpent will not rise again. The woman had left them with silence thicker than stone. Her words clung to the air like smoke, and in that silence, the family found themselves circling the well as if drawn by a thread. Marianne told herself she was only checking, only making sure the children stayed away. But when she stepped into the backyard, her hands trembled without cause. Paul followed close behind, shovel in hand, though he would not admit why. Lydia and Daniel trailed them, too quiet for children, eyes wide and waiting. The well rose from the weeds like a tooth. Its stones were blackened with moss, their mortar crumbled, the ring wide enough to swallow a grown man. The air cooled as they drew close, and the smell grew stronger, earth-damp and metallic, the sweetness gone rotten. The wind sighed upward, but this time it did not sound like wind at all. It sounded like breath. Paul leaned over first, gripping the stones. The darkness inside was complete, a hole without bottom, the kind that seemed to fall forever, even as you stared. "Nothing," he muttered, though his voice wavered. "Just shadows." But Daniel stepped forward, small hands clutching the rim. "No," he whispered. "It's down there. I can hear it." Marianne pulled him back, heart pounding. "Don't." Yet Lydia stayed fixed on the dark. "It's broken," she said softly. "It wants us to see." The words chilled Marianne more than the air. Paul set his jaw and lifted the shovel, striking its metal edge against the stone rim. The clang echoed down, and for a moment the air seemed to shiver. Then came the sound. Not an echo, not a splash, but something hollow, brittle, cracking far below. Marianne staggered back. "Stop, please." But Paul struck again, and the well answered. The sigh turned into a hiss. It rose sharp and wet, rattling the stones, carrying with it a smell like scales burnt on fire. The children clutched their ears. Marianne felt it vibrate in her chest, shaking her ribs. Then, faintly from the deep, a scrape, stone against stone. Something was moving. Paul dropped the shovel, eyes wide. God! And then they saw it. At first, just a glimmer, a shape rising from the dark. The glimmer became pale, rough, slick. The shape grew clearer as it reached the shaft of light. A head, but not a head that belonged to any creature of earth. Its shape was serpentine, jaws wide, teeth jagged, yet the eyes sunken, hollow bore the sockets of a man. Cracks split its surface, stone fused with bone, scales shattered like pottery. It was dead, broken, yet still it rose, as if lifted by hands unseen. Marianne screamed, dragging the children back. Paul stumbled, his mouth opening but no sound emerging. The head lolled, fragments crumbling, and for a moment Marianne thought she saw lips where no lips should be, twisted into a silent snarl. The hiss deepened, rattling through the yard, through the house, through their very teeth, and then the head fell back, vanishing into dark. Silence, but the silence was worse than the sound, because it was not empty. It was waiting. The children sobbed. Paul pulled them close, his arms trembling. Marianne pressed her hands to her mouth, the stench of rot still in her nose, and from the well came the faintest sound, almost too soft to hear. A voice, not serpent, not human, but something between. I am broken. I am ash. You are alone now. That night, the dreams shattered into chaos. Marianne ran again across the endless field, the green-faced man closer than ever, his claws tearing the air at her back. She screamed for the serpent, begged for its coils, its golden eyes, but when the ground split and the body rose, it was not whole. It was shattered, head cracked, bloodless and empty. The serpent writhed once and fell, pieces scattering into mud. The demon's laughter shook the sky. Paul woke gasping, clawing at his own throat. Lydia screamed until her voice broke. Daniel shook so violently Marianne thought he would break, and through it all the sigh of the well grew louder, the house trembling with each breath. By morning, none of them spoke. They sat at the table, pale, shaking, eyes hollow. The woman had not returned, but her words did. The serpent cannot rise forever. Gods fall silent. Guardians grow weary. Marianne clutched her children to her chest. Paul stared at the wall, jaw locked, and outside, the well exhaled, as though mocking them, as though savoring their fear. The day after they saw the head, the house grew quiet in a new way. Not the silence of waiting, not the hush of something asleep. This was the silence of abandonment, of walls that knew their guardian was gone. The air felt heavier, every breath dragging damp earth into their lungs. The smell had worsened mildew, rot, the faint sweetness of something long dead. Paul tried to keep the children occupied. He set puzzles on the scarred pine table, read aloud from a book with a voice that shook. Daniel stared at the pieces without touching them. Lydia sat near the window, lips moving in whispers. Marianne could not stop pacing. Each creak of the floorboards echoed too far. Each shadow looked deeper than it should. And always the well sighed, its breath rattling the glass. As dusk fell, the knock came again, 3 times. Firm, slow. Marianne's heart seized. She opened the door to find the woman standing as though she had never left. Her eyes looked older, her skin drawn. She carried no lantern, but the fading light seemed to cling to her, as though pulled by need. You saw, she said simply. Marianne nodded, tears pressing hot behind her eyes. It is gone, the woman continued. The guardian is broken. Only fragments remain, echoes in your dreams. It cannot rise again. Paul's voice cracked. Then we're what defenseless? The woman's gaze swept the dark hall, the trembling children, the walls that breathed faintly with damp. The serpent held him back for generations. With its death, nothing stops him now. Daniel whimpered. Lydia whispered, He's already here. The woman's head inclined, as if she had heard the same. Yes, he presses through. Your nights will not be only dreams much longer. That night the air thickened. The lamps flickered though the power line was steady. The walls sweated, damp seeping through plaster. From the backyard came the sound of scraping, stone against stone, as though something climbed. The family huddled in the living room. The woman stood by the door, pouch in her hand, muttering low words that made the air shiver. She drew a circle of chalk on the warped floor, her hands steady though her face was pale. Stay inside it, she told them. The circle will not save you long, but it may give you a moment. Paul held Marianne's hand. The children clung to her arms. The house groaned. The sigh of the well deepened into a roar. And then he was there. Not outside, not in dream, inside. The green-faced man stood in the corner, his body dripping with water that smelled of grave soil. His skin gleamed wet, stretched tight across bone. His eyes burned black. His grin split his face. Marianne screamed. Paul rose with a shout. The woman flung powder from her pouch, chanting words that bent the air. For a moment the figure flickered, its grin faltering, but it stepped forward. Each footfall left mud. Each breath rattled like bubbles rising from a swamp. "You are mine," it croaked, its voice wet. "The coil is gone. Only hunger remains." The chalk circle shook, lines breaking. The children cried out. The woman dropped to her knees, her chant cracking. "Leave this house. Leave it now. Take nothing, not even your shadows." Paul shouted. "Where can we go?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Anywhere the serpent did not once sleep. But you must go before dawn." The figure laughed, a sound like gurgling water. "They cannot leave. The house marks them. The well breathes in them already." The serpent did not come. Not in dream, not in waking. Only silence. The silence of death, of scales shattered. Marianne clutched her children tighter, her mind screaming prayers she had not spoken in years. Paul stood before them, shaking but stubborn. The woman's chant grew desperate, but the figure only smiled wider, its teeth gleaming like broken shells. And then, the hiss, soft at first, then louder, shaking the windows, rattling the roof. The serpent's voice, but not strong, not whole, only fragments, shards of sound, a broken god trying once more to rise. The green-faced man shrieked, twisting, his form blurring, as though torn between hunger and fear. The house shook, the floor buckled, the chalk circle split. The family clung to each other, eyes shut, ears filled with hiss and laughter twined together until they were one. When Marianne opened her eyes, the house was still. The woman was gone. The chalk was gone. The green-faced man was gone. Only the smell remained thicker now, damp and rotting. Paul held her hand, but his grip was weak. The children shivered, eyes blank. From the backyard, the well sighed. But the sigh was no longer breath. It was laughter, and beneath it, faint, broken, the echo of a hiss, fading like a dream that would never return. The family left the next day. They drove until the road lost its trees, until the air no longer smelled of damp soil. But at night, in strange motels, they still woke screaming. The dreams followed, because the woman had been right. The house had marked them, and the serpent was gone. Only the green-faced man remained, smiling in every shadow. The mirror on the door. Entry 1. Brooklyn, June Cat Doors. I moved in 2 weeks ago. The place is small, but it's mine. The rent is barely affordable. The plumbing hisses when I turn the taps, and the radiator bangs like it has its own heartbeat, but it's mine. The apartment came half-furnished. I kept the bed, the dresser, the little table by the window. What I didn't plan to keep was the mirror on the closet door. It's tall, framed in wood that looks older than the rest of the building, the glass rippling faintly like it was poured unevenly. The landlord said it came with the place. I don't like it. It catches things, not just my reflection, other things. The way light bends wrong, the way the glass seems to shimmer when I walk past. But it was easier to ignore it than to fight with a door hinge, so I've left it, until last night. Entry 2. June Cons. I woke at 3. Not sure why. Maybe the pipes. Maybe the neighbors upstairs dragging chairs. I got up, used the bathroom, came back half asleep, and then I saw it. Not in the room. In the mirror. Something was sitting on my bed. The figure was black, darker than the unlit apartment, a shape that sucked light out of the air. Shoulders hunched, head bowed. The face, or where a face should be, was a blur, an erasure. I spun around, my heart hammering, but the bed was empty, sheets flat, pillow undisturbed. When I looked back at the mirror, it was still there, sitting, waiting. I turned on every lamp, the overhead, the kitchen, even the tiny bulb above the stove. Light filled the room, but in the mirror, the shadow stayed. I didn't sleep again. Entry 3. June sees. This morning the mirror was ordinary. Just glass. Just me brushing my teeth, combing my hair, pulling on a shirt. I told myself I imagined it, that I was half dreaming. But all day, I felt watched. Not by neighbors, not by strangers on the train by the mirror. Tonight I covered it with a sheet, an old gray one, tucked tight around the frame. Out of sight, out of mind. Except it isn't, because when the apartment went quiet, I heard it. A voice, whispering from behind the cloth. Faint. Thin. I can't get out. Entry 4. June Decept. I pulled the sheet away. Nothing. Just me in the glass, tired and pale. But when I leaned close, when my breath fogged the surface, I swear my reflection didn't move quite in time. My eyes blinked slower. My mouth twitched in a way I didn't. I don't know which was real. That's where the entries stop for now. But if you imagine the voice, low and steady in the dark, still whispering behind that glass, you'll understand why Ben wrote any of this at all. Entry 5. June 18. I didn't sleep. The whispering started at 2, thin as a draft under the sheet. It grew louder, words forming, slipping into my head whether I wanted them or not. I'm here. Let me through. You see me, don't you? I pressed the pillow over my ears. I turned on the fan. I even put in headphones and played white noise until the battery died. Nothing drowned it out. The voice wasn't outside. It was inside. Inside the walls. Inside my chest. Inside the mirror. Entry 6. June 19. I haven't gone to work in 2 days. I tell myself I'll call in sick. But the truth is I don't want to leave the apartment. Because what if something happens when I'm gone? I keep walking past the closet door, lifting the edge of the sheet, peeking. Nothing there. Just glass. Just me. But last night I caught something different. My reflection stood when I didn't. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, head in my hands, and in the mirror I saw myself rise, shoulders straightening, lips curling into a smile that wasn't mine. I dropped the sheet so fast it tore. The whisper came through louder. A laugh, muffled but sharp. I'm almost out. Entry 7. June Vank. I tried to sleep on the couch. It didn't help. The whisper followed me there. Soft at first, then louder, right against my ear. I turned, expecting someone crouched beside me, but the room was empty. When I dared to glance toward the bedroom, the sheet was moving. Not from a draft, not from air. It pulsed, as though someone on the other side was breathing against it. I closed my eyes. I prayed. I don't even pray. When I opened them, the sheet was still again. But the whisper didn't stop. Entry 8. June 20. 4 nights. No sleep. The walls sweat. The air tastes of rust. My eyes sting. Every sound feels doubled, one outside, one inside my skull. The mirror is louder than ever. Not one voice now. Many. Some I don't know. Some I do. I hear my mother's voice calling my name. I hear a stranger's laugh. I hear myself, my own voice pleading to be let out. I stood in front of the glass today, the sheet thrown aside, my fists tight. My reflection blinked a half-second late. Its mouth twitched wrong. When I leaned close, it leaned closer, too close, until its breath fogged the glass, though mine did not, and it whispered in my own voice, "You're the shadow." Entry 9. June 20. I don't know how much longer I can do this. The whisper isn't just at night anymore. It follows me into morning. It slips between the words of the radio. It hides under the hum of the refrigerator. When I look away from the mirror, I feel it staring. When I look at it, I see myself smile when I don't want to. I don't know which side I'm on anymore. I don't know if I ever did. Entry 10. June 20. I caught it again. I walked past the bedroom and the sheet was gone. I don't remember pulling it down. I don't remember touching it. But there it was, bare glass. I froze halfway to the kitchen. My reflection stood there, but wrong. Its hands were at its sides. Mine weren't. I was clutching the counter, knuckles white, and then it lifted its hand. Slowly, deliberately, not waving, not reaching, just pointing at me. I slammed the door shut, but when I opened it again, the mirror showed only me, sweating, pale, shaking. Entry 11. June 20. I dreamed last night, though I don't remember falling asleep. In the dream, the mirror door was open. Not just the closet door, the mirror itself, hinged, swinging wide into a room that wasn't mine. The space beyond was gray, endless, lit by no Sunday shapes moved in the distance, hunched and twitching, their bodies blurred like smears of ink. My reflection walked toward them, grinning. I tried to follow, but my feet were nailed to the floor. When I woke, my bedroom smelled like dust and rain, like the air after a storm in a place that wasn't Brooklyn, and the sheet was gone again. Entry 12. June 25. The mirror doesn't just show me anymore. Today I saw the bed behind me, in the reflection messy, unmade. But when I turned around, the bed was neatly smoothed, covers tucked tight. Later, I saw a chair in the corner. Old wood, scratched legs. I don't own a chair like that. It's showing me another room. A room layered over mine, bleeding through the glass. And every time, the shadow sits there, on the chair, on the bed, waiting. When I leave the apartment, I wonder if I'll come back to the same one. Entry 13, June 26. No sleep. None. I saw it move in daylight. The reflection stood while I Saturday. It walked closer, pressing its palms against the inside of the glass. The sound was like skin dragging on wet glass. Squealing. I backed away, but the mirror stayed clear. No fog, no print, but I swear I saw its lips move. I'm ready. Entry 14, June 27. I can't tell if I'm writing this or if it island. My handwriting looks different. The pen feels heavier. Sometimes when I read back, the words don't sound like mine. They sound older, meaner. The mirror has started to hum at night. A vibration, low, constant, rattling the closet door. My teeth ache when I lie too close. I thought I saw cracks in the glass this morning. Hairline fractures, spreading from the corners. But when I blinked, they were gone. Maybe they weren't cracks. Maybe they were veins. Entry 15, June 28. I stood in front of it for an hour. I couldn't move. My reflection stared back, but I don't think it was waiting anymore. It was practicing. Every tilt of my head, every twitch of my mouth, every blink, it did them slower, smoother, like rehearsing a role. I think it's learning how to be me, and I think it's almost finished. Entry 16, June 29. The mirror spoke. Not a whisper, not a hiss. A voice. Low, human, mine. It said, I can step through whenever I want. I pressed my back to the far wall, staring. My reflection didn't move at first, only smiled, wider than my own mouth could stretch. Then it leaned forward, pressing its hands to the glass. The surface rippled, not the way heat ripples asphalt, not the way water bends light. The mirror bent outward, the glass bulging like skin. I ran from the room, but the voice followed. You're tired. Let me help you rest. Entry 17, June 30. I found scratches on the floor, right below the closet door. 4 long gouges, parallel, fresh. My fingernails ache, but they aren't broken. I keep looking at my hands, wondering if they're still mine. Entry 18, July 1. I blacked out. One moment I was staring at the mirror. The next I was on the bed. Hours gone. When I stood, the sheet was back over the glass. I don't remember covering it, but written across the fabric, in letters traced by something wet. Soon. Entry 19, July 2. The reflection doesn't wait for me anymore. Sometimes I catch it walking past when I'm not near the mirror. Sometimes it stands with its back turned, head cocked, listening. Tonight it pressed its shoulder against the glass, pushing. The frame groaned. I thought I saw its arm slip through. Not solid, not smoke. Something between. It brushed the air outside, stirring the dust, before snapping back in. I didn't move for an hour. I couldn't. Entry 20, July 3. The voice is louder now, clear as anyone standing beside me. It says my name. It laughs when I cry. It finishes my thoughts before I can. When I cover the glass, the voice doesn't stop. It's in the walls, in the pipes, in my mouth. Entry 21, July 4. I stood at the mirror tonight. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to see if it was ready. Maybe I wanted to know if I was. It stared back, my reflection breathing slow, deliberate. Then it spoke in perfect unison with me. Which of us belongs here? The glass shivered. Cracks spread from the corners. Spider webbing. I touched the surface. Warm. And then I felt it push. Entry 22, July 5. I woke up outside the mirror. I don't mean outside the closet door. I mean outside the mirror. I was on the wrong side. Gray air. Endless space. Shapes moving in the distance. And my reflection me stood in my room, stretching, smiling. Alive. It looked at me once, pressed its palm against the glass, and whispered, "Rest." Then it turned away. I screamed, but no sound carried, only the hiss of glass sealing shut. Entry 23, July 6. I don't know how to mark time here. There is no Sunday, no moon, no clock, only the gray, and the shapes moving at the edge of vision. They shuffle closer when I sit still too long. They melt away when I look straight at them. I scream until my throat tears, but the sound dies before it leaves my mouth. And through the glass, I can see him, me. He walks through my apartment like it belongs to him. He cooks, he hums, he answers the phone. When my sister called, he laughed in my voice. When she asked if I was okay, he said, "Never better." Entry 24, July 7. I tried to run. The gray stretches on forever. No walls, no doors. But the more I walk, the more the shapes gather. One brushed my arm. It felt like static, like cold teeth scraping bone. I ran back toward the only landmark, the mirror. Always the mirror. And there he was again, on the other side, asleep in my bed. My bed. I pressed my hands to the glass. He did not wake, but my reflection moved, and it smiled at me. Entry 25, July 8. He doesn't cover the mirror anymore. Why would he? He wants me to watch. I see friends visit. I see him shake their hands. I see him walk through the city in my body, wearing my clothes, carrying my keys. No one notices. Not one person knows. They look at him and see me. And when he glances at the mirror, at me, he winks. Entry 26, July 9. I think I'm fading. The gray eats at me. My fingers blur at the edges. My face feels soft, melting. When I press against the glass, my skin leaves no mark. I don't know how much longer I'll last. Maybe that's the point. Maybe once I dissolve, he'll be all that remains. Entry 27, July 10. He's writing in the journal now. I saw it. He sat at my table, pen in hand, filling pages in my handwriting. But the words weren't mine. I pressed against the glass, begging him to stop. But the words kept coming. And when I looked closer, I realized something. These entries, these words, they're already his. Entry 28, July 11. I woke today and the gray was gone. There was only the room. My room, the bed, the dresser, the closet, the mirror. I was back. For a moment, I believed it. Then I looked closer. The glass was smooth, clear, empty, no reflection at all. Just me, standing alone. Entry 29, July 12. I feel good. Better than I have in years. The headaches are gone. The whispers are gone. I look in the mirror and see only myself. I smile, and the smile fits. I laugh, and the laugh feels right. Everything is as it should be. I am free. Final note. If you are reading this, don't worry. The mirror is safe now. I am here. I am Ben. Always have been. Always will be. Footprints on the shore. A beach remembers more than footprints. It remembers the weight of chains dragged through the surf. It remembers the echo of storms, the cries that dissolved into salt air, the silence of names swallowed by the tide. Sand does not forget, no matter how often the waves smooth its face. Joe did not think of this when he set out that night. He only wanted air. The rain had broken just before dusk, leaving the streets slick, the lamps dripping halos of light. His small rental cottage sat at the edge of the town, where the dunes began their long slope down to the water. The ocean had called him every evening since he arrived, but tonight the call felt stronger, edged with something he could not name. He carried no umbrella. The last drops of rain clung to his jacket, the salt wind biting his skin. Ahead, the beach stretched wide and empty, the tide pulling long fingers of foam back into itself. The air smelled of kelp, wet stone, something older beneath. He walked. His boots pressed dark ovals into the sand, each one quickly softened by water, blurred as if the beach refused to keep his mark. And then he saw the rock. It rose from the sand like a shipwrecked prow, black and jagged, its surface carved by years of wind and wave. He might have passed it without thought except the lightning struck. For an instant the whole beach burned white, and on the face of the rock he saw lines. Not natural proofs, carvings, a pattern worn but deliberate. A dragon, its body coiled, its head reared, mouth open in a silent roar. Gold leaf clung in fragments to the stone, glinting when the lightning hit, as if some stubborn shimmer refused to die. Joe blinked. The sky darkened again, thunder rolling, and the dragon was only rock once more. He exhaled, shivering. Just a trick of light. But the air disagreed. It began with sound. At first only the surf, steady, familiar. Then another rhythm, heavier, like feet dragging, like iron striking stone. Joe turned. At the far edge of the beach, where the dunes bent into shadow, shapes moved. A line of figures, dark against the foam. Their heads bowed, their shoulders bent, their wrists bound by chains that clinked and rattled though the wind should have drowned them. One after another they walked, feet sinking, rising, sinking again, closer. The line stretched too far, vanishing into mist. Joe's chest tightened, the lightning flared again, and he saw them clearer. Not men, not whole. Their faces were hollow, features blurred by shadow. Their bodies bled into the night air, more smoke than flesh. Yet the chains were solid, glinting wet, links dragging furrows in the sand. One raised its head. Its eyes were empty, and then the line turned toward him. Joe's legs moved before his mind did. He ran. The sand gave way beneath him, sucking his boots, slowing every stride. Behind him, the clinking quickened. The sound of chains tightened. Links pulled taut. He dared a glance over his shoulder. They were faster now. Their feet did not stumble. Their bodies did not tire. The line held, each shadow bound to the next, moving as one, an endless tide of dark. Joe's breath tore his throat. He pushed harder, toward the water, as though the surf could swallow him safe. But the beach betrayed him. His foot caught in a rut. His body pitched forward, and he crashed into the sand. The grit burned his mouth. Salt filled his nose. He rolled, gasping. The shadows were almost upon him. Chains rattled, louder than the sea. Lightning split the sky. The dragon glowed. For one heartbeat, the carving burned gold, scales flashing, wings unfurling where none had been. Its eyes flared, molten fire and stone. The air cracked, and then it moved. The dragon peeled from the rock, stone skin giving way to living light. Its body coiled, vast and blinding, rising above the beach. Sand whipped in storms around its scales. The roar that split the air was not thunder, not wind, but something older, something that shook the chains until they screamed. The shadows faltered. Their line broke. One by one they staggered, their forms unraveling like smoke and fire. The dragon reared, its wings blotting the storm, and with a strike of golden light, it swept across the beach. Chains shattered, figure dissolved. The line that had stretched beyond sight was gone, erased in an instant, leaving only the hiss of surf and the taste of salt. Joe lay trembling, half buried in sand. The air stank of ozone and metal. His ears rang with silence too vast to hold. The dragon circled once, its body arching like a comet, gold against black sky. For a breath it looked down at him. Its eyes were not cruel, not kind, only endless. And then lightning struck again. The dragon was gone. Only the rock remained, dark and jagged, rain slicking its face. The carving was faint, fainter than before, as if each glimpse stole a piece of it away. Joe staggered to his feet, the taste of ash on his tongue. His footprints trailed behind him, quickly swallowed by the tide. Joe told himself it had been a trick of the storm. Lightning, exhaustion, salt wind in his eyes, any of it could have bent his senses until shadows became chains and rock became dragon. He repeated that to himself the entire walk back to the cottage, boots leaving shallow dents in the sand, heart pounding as though it wanted to tear free. By dawn, he believed it. Almost, but the smell of ozone lingered, and when he closed his eyes, he still heard chains snapping, still felt the weight of eyes that did not belong to stone. The next morning he returned. The beach was bright now, sun spilling gold across the surf. Children shouted, chasing gulls. Couples walked barefoot along the tide. The rock stood where it always had, black and jagged, unremarkable to anyone else. Joe forced himself closer, his shadow bending across the sand. The carving was there, not gone, not whole. Faint lines etched into stone, worn almost smooth. A curve that might have been a wing, a hollow that might have been an eye. Nothing more. No one else noticed. They walked past, laughing, dripping salt water, sipping sodas from plastic cups. But Joe stood staring until his breath turned shallow, because in the heart of the hollow eye, sunlight caught, and it glowed, only for a heartbeat. only enough for him to doubt. But it glowed. He tried to shake it. He went back to work. He stocked shelves at the corner store, counted coins for tourists, nodded when they asked about fishing spots. He cooked pasta at night, drank beer from the can, watched muted television until his eyes burned. But when he blinked, he saw chains dragging through wet sand. When thunder rolled in the distance, he heard the dragon roar. When the air stilled, too quiet, he smelled damp stone and knew the beach was waiting. 3 nights later, he returned. He told himself he only wanted air, only wanted to walk, but his feet carried him straight to the rock. The tide was low, the beach wide and pale beneath the moon. Clouds moved slow, their edges silver, and then he heard it, the clink, soft at first, barely more than the shifting of shells, then louder, the sound of links pulled taut, of feet dragging heavy. Joe turned, dread filling his chest before sight confirmed it. The line was back. Shadows in the mist, bound together, heads bent, chains rattling, longer than before. Fallonge. The figures stretched down the beach until they merged with night. Their feet sank into sand but left no mark. Their eyes were hollows, and all at once, the line turned toward him. Joe's legs stiffened, his breath caught. He wanted to run, but the sand held him. The figures drew closer, chains dragging furrows. Each step echoed in his ribs, and then lightning flared. The carving burned brighter. Gold leaf that had been dust an hour ago now shimmered across wings, across scales. The dragon's head tilted skyward, mouth open. The glow did not fade this time. It pulsed, faint but steady, as though something inside the stone had woken. The figures halted. The chains fell silent, and then the line bent, splitting, half turning toward the rock, half toward Joe. The air tasted of iron. The tide hissed, retreating too fast. Joe staggered backward. No, not again. The first figure raised its head. Its face was clearer now, cheeks sunken, mouth torn, eyes dark wells, and when it opened its lips, he heard words drag through water. We are not gone. Joe fled. The chains rang behind him, closer than before, closer with every step. His boots tore furrows in the sand. His lungs burned, but even as he ran, he looked back once, and what he saw rooted terror deeper than any nightmare. The dragon was not stone anymore. Note entirely. Its eyes burned gold. Its wings twitched, scattering sand, but its body was still fused to the rock, half alive, half carved, straining as if to break free. The shadows pressed closer, chains trembling, pulled toward it like iron to magnet. The dragon's throat glowed, faint light swelling. Joe turned and ran until his chest split with fire. When he reached his cottage, he slammed the door, locked it twice, and pressed his back against the wall, shaking until dawn. The beach did not sleep, and neither did he, because each time his eyes closed, he saw the dragon straining against stone, and each time he listened hard enough, above the hiss of tide and the rattle of chains, he swore he heard its breath, slow, heavy, waiting, and the carving glowed brighter in his mind than it ever had in the storm. Joe could not leave it behind. He tried. He told himself he'd avoid the shoreline, keep to the streets where neon signs buzzed and diners smelled of fried shrimp and coffee. He sat at the counter, drank until his throat numbed, listened to locals talk about fishing tides and storm seasons, but every pause between words carried another sound: clink, drag, clink, chains, always chains. When he walked home at night, he saw them at the edge of vision, figures half swallowed by mist, shoulders bent, feet sinking without prints. He turned sharply, heart hammering, and the sidewalks were empty again, only rain-slick pavement and the smell of brine. But his reflection in shop windows told another truth. Behind him, in the warped glass, shadows trailed. At the cottage, sleep gave no escape. He dreamed of sand pressed into his skin, chains looped tight around his arms, pulling him into the tide. He dreamed of the dragon fused to stone, its eyes molten, its wings straining but stuck. Each breath it took made the earth quake. Each hiss rattled his bones, and when he woke, he swore the cottage shook with it. Plaster cracked faintly near the window frame. Cups rattled in the sink. The air stank of wet iron. By the 5th night, Joe gave up resisting. He returned to the beach. The tide was low, the moon thin. The rock waited, black against starlight, but the carving no longer seemed faint. Its lines were sharper, deeper, as though fresh cut. The curve of the wings gleamed faintly gold, even without lightning. And its eyes, they glowed, not bright, not yet, but steady. A faint fire, like coals in ash. Joe staggered closer, his boots sinking. The sand was colder here, damp as though something breathed beneath it. He touched the stone. It was warm. Behind him, the chains rattled. He turned and saw them again, longer now, thicker, the lines stretching far beyond sight. The shadows marched slowly, their faces hollow, but their chains dragged grooves deep enough to remain even as the tide licked at them. This time they did not rush him. They halted in unison, as though waiting. And when the dragon's glow brightened, they swayed. Joe's throat closed. He whispered, "What are you?" The nearest shadow lifted its head. Its mouth gaped, jaw unhinged too wide, and from it came the hiss of surf words dragged through water. Bound. Then it raised its chained arms and pointed toward the dragon. The entire line followed. 1,000 shadows, hands raised, chains rattling in chorus, all pointing at the dragon, at Joe. He fled again, sand flying under his boots, but the sound followed clink, 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 until he reached the cottage door and slammed it shut. The silence afterward was worse, because in that silence, the cottage walls glowed faintly, light leaking from cracks in the plaster, not electric light, golden, dragon light. Joe stopped eating. Food tasted of salt and ash. Water smelled of brine. He walked the town streets hollow-eyed, hearing chains behind every corner. People glanced at him, frowned, looked away quickly as if sensing something clung to him. One morning, a fisherman touched his shoulder. "You all right, son?" Joe opened his mouth to answer, but the word that came out wasn't his. "Bound." The man recoiled, crossing himself, muttering a prayer before hurrying away. Joe hadn't meant to say it. He hadn't meant to smile when he did, but he did. That night he dreamed again of the dragon, only this time it wasn't trapped. Its body shifted, scales sliding, stone cracking like shells. Its wings stretched wide, tearing sky. Its roar bent the horizon. The shadows screamed, chains snapping, their lines scattering into mist. Joe reached out in the dream, tears burning his eyes, and the dragon looked at him, not through him, at him. Its mouth opened, and in a voice that shook the marrow of his bones, it said one word, "Chosen." Joe woke gasping. The cottage glowed. The light seeped through the window cracks, through the floorboards, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. He staggered outside, barefoot on wet grass, and looked toward the beach. The rock blazed, not faint, not hidden. The carving burned gold from wingtip to tail, alive with fire. The dragon's eyes were suns. And the chains? He heard them still, louder, closer. But for the first time, they were not chasing. They were circling. The shadows gathered around the rock, their line unbroken, their hollow faces lifted in something like worship. Joe stood frozen, breath shallow, and when the dragon's body twitched, stone breaking, sparks flying, he knew it was coming. It was almost free. The storm had not broken yet, but the sky trembled as if it already knew. Joe stood at the edge of the surf, toes sinking into wet sand, staring at the rock. He could not pretend anymore. There was no trick of lightning, no play of shadow. The dragon burned. Golden fire licked its coils, tracing lines that had been etched into stone for centuries, now alive with breath. Each flare threw sparks across the beach, illuminating the tide in fractured light. Its wings twitched, stone cracking, slabs falling away into the sea. And all around the rock, the shadows gathered. They came in endless rows, dragging chains that clinked like bells struck underwater. Their hollow eyes never blinked. Their mouths whispered a single word, again and again, low and ragged. Bound, bound, bound. Joe's knees buckled. His breath caught. He wanted to flee, but the beach had trapped him, every grain of sand pulling his feet down like hands. The dragon's head lifted. Its eyes blazed, and the world split open. The roar began deep, like the earth itself exhaling. It rose into thunder, into fire, into a sound so vast it shook Joe's ribs until his teeth ached. The rock exploded into shards. The dragon burst free, its coils unwrapped across the beach, scales blinding gold. Its wings tore the night sky, scattering stars. With each movement, the air stank of ozone. The sea hissed, waves leaping in panic. The shadows shrieked. Chains rattled, tightening, links glowing as though heated by the dragon's light. They surged forward in unison, a tide of black forms, their shackles striking sparks against stone, and Joe stood at the center of it all, trembling. The first wave of shadows lunged, arms outstretched, chains whipping forward. The dragon struck back, jaws opening. A torrent of fire seared the air, not red but white gold, hotter than lightning. The chains writhed, glowing, melting but not breaking. Instead, the links wrapped tighter, forming walls, cages, spirals of iron smoke that lunged at the dragon's body. Joe staggered, the heat blistering his skin. He fell to his knees, sand burning beneath him, the world awash in light and black iron. He pressed his hands over his ears, but still he heard them, thousands of voices shrieking through hollow throats, a hymn of bondage, and the dragon answered, each roar a hymn of fire. The air shook with impact. Waves rose high as cliffs, slamming against the shore, dragging half the shadows into the sea. The dragon's coils writhed, smashing chains into splinters, scattering sparks across the night. But the shadows reformed, unbroken. For every one shattered, 3 more rose. They clung to the dragon's body, chains snaring its wings, pulling, dragging. The golden scales hissed as iron bit into them, black smoke rising where holy fire met ancient rust. Joe crawled backward, gasping, his vision blurred. His heart raced until it felt as though it might tear, yet he could not look away. The dragon reared higher, its head blotting the storm clouds, its eyes locked on Joe, and he felt it not words, but a flood of meaning, pressing into his bones. You brought me forth. You are the witness. You are the tether. Joe shook his head, tears streaking down his face. I can't, I don't, I'm no one. But the chains snapped toward him, dozens of them stretching from shadow arms, clinking, whistling through the air. They wrapped his wrists, his ankles, dragging him forward. Joe screamed as iron bit into his flesh. His body collapsed, sand scraping his face. The shadows pulled, toward them, toward the dragon, toward the center where fire and iron collided. The dragon roared again, wings spreading, fire flooding the beach. The chains around Joe glowed white, but they did not break. Instead, they tightened, burning into his skin, smoke rising. He screamed, the sound swallowed by storm. The dragon lunged downward, jaws wide, fangs gleaming. For a heartbeat, Joe thought it meant to kill him, to end it. But the jaws snapped shut around the chains instead. The fire surged. The links shattered, exploding into sparks that rained across the sand. The shadows wailed, their voices breaking, some dissolving into mist, others scattering into the tide. But still they came, always more, always bound. Joe collapsed, wrists bleeding, lungs scorched. He crawled on his elbows, dragging himself toward the surf, but his eyes lifted once more, helpless, to the war above. The dragon was ablaze, its body wrapped in fire, wings battering storm clouds into pieces. Its coils struck down hundreds of shadows at once, smashing them into sand that hissed with heat. But the shadows clung, thousands still, their chains woven into nets, binding the dragon's limbs, pulling tighter, tighter, until even the fire dimmed. The beach shook, the cliffs cracked, the tide surged higher, carrying foam black as ink. And Joe understood. This was not a battle meant to end. This was the clash of memory and forgetting, of bondage and defiance, of everything the beach had ever held. And he, caught between, was nothing but a witness, or perhaps a sacrifice. The dragon's eyes blazed once more, locking on him. The chains dragged him forward again, toward the coils, toward the golden heat, and in his skull, the voice pressed harder, chosen. Joe could not tell if he was screaming or if the sound belonged to the chains. They pulled him forward, burning his wrists, dragging him across sand turned molten by the dragon's fire. His chest heaved, lungs raw, but the storm drowned everything. Lightning tore the sky into ribbons. Waves crashed like collapsing walls. The roar of the dragon split his skull, golden flame spilling in arcs that set the shadows shrieking. And still they came. The line stretched endless, thousands bound together, their hollow eyes lifted not to the dragon but to him. You are the tether, the voice pressed inside him. Through you. The scales tip. Joe shook his head, sobbing. No, I'm nothing. I can't. The chains jerked harder, hauling him into the dragon's coils. Heat seared his skin, light blinding. He threw his arms up, but the fire did not consume him. It wrapped him, like protection, like claim. He found himself inside the dragon's shadow. Scales the size of shields rose around him, each glowing faintly gold, each vibrating with sound deeper than thunder. The dragon's breath filled the air, heavy with salt and ash, rattling his bones. Through gaps in the coils, he saw the shadows raging, their chains whipping, striking against scales, sparking as they tried to pierce the gold. And he felt it then, the chains reaching for him. Not his body, but his name, his memory. They tugged at his childhood, at his mother's voice, at the nights he'd walked the beach as a boy. They wanted to hollow him, make him one of them, faceless and bound. The dragon roared, fire spilling from its jaws, breaking a dozen chains at once, but more replaced them. Infinite, a tide that could not be ended. Joe understood. The dragon could burn forever, the shadows could march forever, and the beach would remember both until the sky fell. The only thing that could change was him. The dragon's eyes blazed, gold piercing his mind. Choose. The word rang through him, louder than the sea, louder than the chains. If he yielded to the shadows, he would join them, another faceless figure, another weight of iron clinking forever along the tide. If he yielded to the dragon, he would cease to be himself, his body and breath consumed, turned into fire that would burn but never rest. Neither was salvation. Both were eternity. The chain snapped again, wrapping his ankle, his chest. He fell, gasping, sand grinding his teeth. The shadows hissed, hollow mouths gaping. The dragon lunged, jaws wide, fire swelling. And in the instant before impact, Joe whispered, "Take me." The fire struck. He did not burn, had dissolved. Every memory, every breath, every heartbeat unfolded like ash and wind. He felt himself stretch, expand, coil, until his skin was no longer skin but scale, until his voice was no longer voice but roar. For a moment, an endless moment, he was the dragon. He saw the chains writhe like worms across the shore. He struck them, flame flowing from his chest like rivers of light. Shadows screamed, scattering into mist. But he also felt the weight of eternity, the exhaustion of centuries bound to stone. The dragon had not freed him. It had folded him inside itself, and through him it was whole again. The storm broke, clouds ripped apart, rain poured, hissing against golden scales. The beach shone like glass, the shadows shrank, their chains slack, retreating into tide. Their hollow eyes glared one last time, not at the dragon, but at him. You chose wrong. Then they dissolved into foam, leaving only furrows in sand that waves quickly smoothed. The dragon coiled once, twice, its body circling the rock as if remembering its prison. Then it turned toward the cliffs. Its eyes caught Joe's reflection in the water, but the reflection was not his face. It was gold, endless, burning. The next morning the beach was empty. Fishermen found the rock cracked, its carving erased. They said lightning had shattered it. Tourists walked barefoot, leaving footprints that vanished with the tide. No one spoke of chains, but sometimes, when the sky bruised with storm, they swore they heard a sound, not thunder, not surf, but something deeper. A roar, low and steady, carried in the salt wind. And if they turned quickly enough, they might see a man's shape in the waves, walking just ahead, his feet leaving no prints at all. An umbrella in the rain. Do you need an umbrella? The voice came out of the rain, brittle and thin, as if the storm itself had leaned close to whisper. Maria stopped dead. The pier stretched ahead of her, soaked planks gleaming under dim lamps, puddles rippling with every drop. She was alone, she had been certain of it, but the words had brushed past her ear like breath. She turned. No one stood on the dock. The streets behind were empty. The windows of the fish market shuttered, neon signs buzzing faintly through the curtain of rain. And yet there, a shape, down by the water, half shielded by mist. A boat drifted. Rust streaked its hull, wood blackened with rot. It rocked gently, though no wave stirred, though the tide had been calm all evening. On the stern sat a man, old, pale, his coat plastered to his body, hair streaming with rain. His hands gripped the oar, though the boat barely moved. And as she stared, he lifted his head and smiled. "Do you need an umbrella, miss?" His voice echoed too sharp, too loud, carrying farther than it should in the storm. Maria's throat tightened. She took one step back, her heels clacking against wood. "I'm fine," she managed. But the boat slid closer, not with strokes of the oar, not with current. It simply glided, inch by inch, as if the water delivered it to her. The man's pale eyes never left hers. "You'll catch cold." Maria pulled her coat tighter. Rain ran down her face, filling her mouth with salt and rust. She wanted to turn, to run back toward the street, but her legs refused. Something in the man's voice rooted her to the spot, brittle and fragile as glass. The boat bumped against the dock. The old man rose. He stood taller than she expected, his coat hanging loose, heavy with water. His lips curved, but his teeth were gray, broken, as though he had chewed stone. In his hand he held an umbrella. Not new, not clean. The fabric was torn, the frame bent, rust creeping along the spokes. Rain poured through the gaps, spattering his shoulders. Still, he held it out toward her. "Take it," he said. Maria shook her head, backing away now. One step, then another. "No, please, I don't need." Thunder cracked, and the lights along the pier flickered. Once, twice. When they steadied again, the man was closer. He had not stepped. The boat had not moved, but he was closer. The umbrella hung inches from her chest. "Take it," he whispered. Rain rattled through the torn fabric. 1,000 tiny drumming fingers. Maria turned and ran. Her boots pounded the planks, splashing through puddles, heart crashing in her ears. Behind her, wood groaned, the creak of rope, the scrape of hull against dock, and then the sound she dreaded most. Oars, pulling once, twice. The boat was following. She fled toward the street, lamps blurring through rain. The storm howled against her, wind clawing her hair, spray cutting her cheeks. Every breath tasted of iron, and always, behind, the scrape of wood against water, steady as her pulse. She risked a glance over her shoulder. The boat moved faster now, its bow slicing puddles as if the pier itself were a river. The old man stood within it, pale face gleaming, umbrella raised high like a banner. "You'll catch cold," he called. The voice rolled across the dock, chasing her. "You'll catch cold." Maria stumbled, skidding on wet wood, palms scraping against splinters. She scrambled upright, legs screaming, lungs burning, and ran harder. But the boat never slowed. It followed, smooth and tireless, gliding over rain-slicked boards, closer, closer, until she could hear it breathe. At last she reached the end of the pier where the cobblestones began. The street lamps buzzed, brighter here, their light silver in the downpour. Maria plunged into the street, her boots slapping water, her coat plastered to her skin. She did not look back, not until she reached the corner, chest heaving, rain streaming into her eyes. She turned. The pier lay empty. No boat, no man, only the sea, black and endless, swallowing the dock in its mist. Maria's hands trembled. Her body shook with the cold, and for the first time, she realized she was holding something. Her fingers clutched a handle, slick with rust. The torn umbrella dangled from her hand. Maria didn't remember unlocking her door. One moment she had stood at the street corner, gasping, rain slicking her eyes, the pier behind her swallowed by mist. The next, she was inside her apartment, small, second floor, above a shuttered bakery. Her coat still dripped onto the floorboards. Her hair clung to her neck. Her chest burned as though she had run miles, and in her hand was the umbrella. She stared at it for a long time. The fabric sagged with water, though she hadn't opened it. Rust streaked the bent spokes. The handle, curved wood, pressed splinters into her palm. She set it down in the corner by the door, wiping her hand against her coat. The rust smeared her skin, orange-brown. She told herself she would throw it out in the morning. But when she closed her eyes, the sound of the boat's oars still rang in her skull. The rain stopped near midnight. Maria woke to silence, heart pounding. She pushed herself upright in bed, listening. No storm, no wind, only the hum of the refrigerator and the faint groan of the old building settling. Relief softened her shoulders. She rose, padded barefoot to the window, and looked out. The street was dark and empty. Puddles reflected the lamps. Still, unbroken. She exhaled, pressing her forehead against cool glass. And then she heard it. Water. Not outside. Inside. She turned. In the corner, the umbrella dripped. One bead after another slid from its torn fabric, splashing onto the wooden floor, darkening the boards. The puddle grew, though the umbrella hadn't moved, though the storm had ended hours ago. Maria's throat dried. She crept closer, staring. The drops smelled sharp. Not fresh rain. Salt. Like the sea. She jerked back, gagging. She didn't sleep again. The next morning, she found the puddle dried to a stain, white crust edging the wood, like salt left behind when the tide recedes. She wrapped the umbrella in a garbage bag, tying it tight, and shoved it under the sink. By afternoon, the bag was damp. By evening, the floor beneath the cabinet warped, swollen by water that should not have been there. Maria cursed under her breath, dragging the bag back out. It dripped steady, pattering like rain. She threw it onto the balcony, slammed the door, and pulled the curtain tight. But that night, she woke again. The sound of oars. She froze in bed, breath shallow, a steady rhythm, wood striking water. Closer, closer. She pulled herself to the window, trembling. Her street lay still, no tide, no river. The bakery's roof gleamed faint with dew, and yet, across the street, in the glow of the single working lamp, shadows moved. A boat, rust-streaked, bow dripping, gliding between parked cars as though the asphalt were water, and on its stern sat the man, pale and soaked, umbrella raised. Maria's scream died in her throat. She dropped to the floor, pressing her back against the wall. Her heart hammered so loudly she thought it might draw him to her. The oars kept steady, then stopped. Silence stretched, thick as fog. Maria forced herself to peek through the curtain. The street was empty again. Only shadows, only lamps, only night. But the umbrella now stood inside, by the door, propped neatly against the wall where she always left her own. Its torn fabric sagged, dripping salt water onto the rug. Maria pressed her hands over her mouth, body shaking. She told herself she was dreaming, that she'd fallen asleep at the window. But when dawn broke gray, the rug was soaked, the stain spreading. She stepped over it, numb, and poured herself coffee. Her hands trembled too much to drink. On the counter sat her own umbrella, whole, black, dry, and beside it, the other one, rust handle, torn fabric, still wet, as if waiting. That night, Maria refused to look out the window, but the sound followed anyway. Oars dragging through invisible water, splashes where no sea existed. And when she closed her eyes, she felt the air dampen, salt clinging to her skin, the faint groan of wood rising from beneath the floor. Maria stopped counting nights. She knew only that the hours had stretched thin, like fabric worn to threads. Sleep would not come, not truly. Each time her eyes drifted shut, the sound returned, steady, rhythmic, inescapable. Oars, dragging, pulling, splitting water that did not exist. At first, she stuffed pillows over her ears, shoved earbuds deep, turned the radio high until voices blurred into static. But beneath it all, always, the beat of wood on water found her, a pulse she could not block. The umbrella grew bolder. She never saw it move, but it was never still. One morning, it leaned against the door. That night, it waited at the foot of her bed. By dawn, it had returned to the kitchen wall, dripping onto the tiles, leaving salt trails like veins. She tried throwing it out again down the trash chute this time, listening to the clatter as it fell. But when she turned the corner back to her apartment, keys in hand, it was already inside, resting against the hallway mirror, tilted slightly toward her reflection. Her neighbors began to look at her differently. Mrs. Chen from across the hall wrinkled her nose, muttering about the fish stink seeping under Maria's door. A boy delivering groceries swore he heard waves sloshing inside. Maria said nothing. She only shut her door tighter, locked it twice, and sat with her back to the wood, listening. Salt water dripped, slow, steady, from the umbrella propped at her side. Each drop rang louder than thunder. By the seventh night, she no longer trusted the windows. Shades drawn, curtains pinned, she curled on the couch with a blanket over her head. Still, she felt the gaze pressing through glass. Because the boat had come closer, it no longer floated beyond the street. It hovered just outside her building. She saw it once, when she dared lift the curtain an inch. The hull scraped the balcony rail. The wood bled rust into rain that was not falling. And the man sat as before, coat plastered, hair dripping, umbrella raised high. His eyes found hers through the crack. White, empty, and yet smiling. Maria dropped the curtain, heart pounding so hard her chest hurt. But when she opened her eyes, she realized her hands were no longer empty. She held the umbrella. The torn fabric sagged, leaking brine across her lap. She left it in the bathroom that night, door shut, towels stuffed along the crack. But at 3 a.m, she woke to a tap, 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 not at the door, at the window. She rose slowly, every muscle aching, blanket dragging behind her. She crossed the living room, bare feet sticky with salt, and she saw it. The boat floated level with her window, impossible at the second floor. The man sat inside, pale face inches from the glass. His lips moved, shaping words she could not hear. Between his hands he held the umbrella, her umbrella spokes bent like ribs, dripping water that streaked down the window pane. Maria staggered back. Her ankle struck something. She looked down. Another umbrella, the same one, propped neatly against her leg, handle pressed into her palm. She screamed. The sound cracked the apartment walls, echoing too loud for such a small space. The boat shuddered, rocking against air. The old man's eyes widened, mouth splitting into a grin too wide, and the oars dipped. Once, twice, the boat pushed closer, nose striking the wall, wood groaning as though eager to breach. Maria ran, through the kitchen, past the bathroom door that dripped steadily, past the bed where salt had crusted sheets into stiff waves. But no matter where she went, the sound followed. Oars, dragging, pulling, inviting. She collapsed against the front door, breath tearing her chest. She squeezed her eyes shut, whispering prayers she hadn't spoken since childhood. The apartment hushed. No oars, no drips, only silence. Maria opened her eyes. The umbrella leaned against the door, upright, perfectly still, as if waiting. The first crack split the wall. Maria heard it before she saw it. A groan deep as shifting stone, plaster trembling like a held breath. She pressed her back against the door, eyes locked on the umbrella. It stood where she had left it, dripping brine onto the rug. Then the crack widened. Plaster flaked. A bead of water swelled, broke, streamed down. Another, and another, until the wall itself wept. The sound of oars swelled, no longer distant, no longer muffled by glass. Inside, Maria turned. The boat's bow pressed through her living room wall as though the plaster were surf. Splinters fell, water gushed, the air thick with the stench of salt and rust. The man rose from his seat, pale and dripping, coat plastered to skin. His hands gripped the rotten umbrella, its fabric rattling though no wind stirred. He lifted it toward her. "Take it." The words struck harder than thunder. Maria screamed, scrambling away, feet slipping in water that now poured across the floor. The apartment tilted. Dishes slid from counters, shattering into foam. Through the cracks in the walls, tide surged. Fish darted past her ankles. Seaweed snaked across the rug. Her apartment was drowning, and the city outside drowned with it. She stumbled to the window. The curtains flailed as though caught in storm. Beyond the glass, no street stretched, no bakery gleamed, only waves. Buildings leaned half submerged, their windows gaping mouths filled with spray. Street lamps flickered underwater, bending light into crooked halos. Cars bobbed, upside down, tires spinning like kelp fronds, and threading through it all boats. Dozens, rust-streaked hulls, black water pouring from seams, each carrying pale figures with empty eyes. Their umbrellas flapped, torn fabric rattling like wings. Oars dipped, oars rose, a fleet, advancing through a city that had become sea. Maria pressed a hand to her chest, choking. This isn't real, but the salt burned her tongue. The cold numbed her legs, and the umbrella at her feet nudged forward, handle angling toward her palm. The boat struck again, harder. Her apartment wall caved, timbers snapping like ribs. Water surged, tossing her across the floor. She gasped, sputtering, arms flailing. The man loomed above her, eyes white, mouth grinning wide. He leaned down, umbrella dripping, and pressed the handle against her chest. "You'll catch cold," His breath stank of tide. Maria shoved at him, kicking, clawing, but her fingers slid on soaked cloth. The boat rocked closer, its boards groaning, its ropes slapping walls that were no longer walls but docks, piers, slips, vanishing under endless flood. The city was gone. Only harbor, only storm. The umbrella's handle burned against her skin. Not hot cold, so deep it pierced bone. She gasped, fingers clenching around it despite herself. And the moment she did, the world lurched. Her apartment dissolved into spray. The ceiling fell away, replaced by cloud. The floor tilted, and she slid screaming onto the deck of the boat. The man caught her wrist, grip iron, pulling her upright. His grin did not fade. Better, he rasped. All around, the fleet moved closer, oars striking water in unison. A sound like chains rattling against wood. Umbrellas bobbed, torn fabric snapping, until the entire sea was filled with their flutter. Maria clutched hers tighter, shaking. The rain stung harder, drops slicing like needles, and when she dared glance at the city's ruins, she saw more faces at windows, on rooftops, pale eyes staring as boats drew near. One by one, hands reached out, taking umbrellas proffered by gray men. One by one, they climbed aboard. The man at her side leaned close, whispering into her ear, "You're safe now, as long as you hold it." She stared at him, trembling. Safe from what? The oars rose, dripping black water. The boats creaked, and from beneath the waves came the answer. Hands, pale, countless, reaching upward, grasping at hulls, scratching wood, fingertips split, nails peeling, salt flesh clinging like seaweed. Maria staggered back, nearly toppling into the tide. The man caught her again, shoving the umbrella higher, safe from them. The storm howled. Lightning split the horizon, revealing hundreds of hands, hundreds of faces gasping in silence just below the surface. Their eyes glowed faint, their mouths opened and closed against drowning waves. Maria screamed, pressing herself against the mast, knuckles white around the umbrella's handle. The man only smiled and rowed them deeper into the drowned city. Maria did not know how long she had been at sea. At first, she told herself hours, then nights, then weeks. But the rain never stopped. The sky never lightened. The drowned city drifted behind them, half swallowed by fog, as the fleet pressed onward into waters without horizon. She held the umbrella always. She could not let go. The first time she tried, her fingers froze stiff, locked as though welded to the wood. The handle had grown slick, pulsing faintly with warmth, like skin. When she loosened her grip, the boat rocked violently, water surging over the sides, pale hands clutching for her ankles. The old man only smiled. Hold it tighter. They can't touch you when you hold it. And so she did. Days, or what she thought might be days, passed. Maria's reflection changed. When she glanced at water pooling in the bottom of the boat, she no longer saw her own eyes. She saw something paler, emptier. Her lips curved when she had not meant to smile. Her breath misted though the air was warm. Her hair clung to her scalp in damp strands, never drying, no matter how long the storm raged. The others, those who had climbed aboard other boats, looked the same, all clutching umbrellas, all silent, all with faces fading, eyes paling, shoulders bending forward under weight unseen. Sometimes the boats passed close enough for Maria to see their passengers clearly, a mother rocking a child, both dripping, both clutching the same torn fabric between them, a man in a suit, his tie floating loose, his eyes rolled white. Teenagers huddled together, their laughter hollow, repeating phrases like broken records, all holding umbrellas, always umbrellas. The old men who rowed never spoke to one another, but their pale grins stretched in unison, their oars striking water in a rhythm that no storm could break. And through it all, the sound of dripping never ceased. One night, or perhaps it was the same night that had never ended, Maria lifted her umbrella high, staring at the torn fabric. Rain should have poured through the holes. Instead, the drops slowed, twisted, funneled downward into the spokes. They dripped steady into her hands, leaving salt crust on her palms, burning like fire. She gasped, trying to release it, but her hands clung tighter. Her knuckles cracked, her nails bled, yet the handle only dug deeper into her flesh. And when she looked again at the torn fabric, she saw faces there, pressed against the weave, mouths open, eyes wide, whispering, "Join us." Maria cried out, shoving the umbrella away. It clattered to the deck but did not fall. It stood upright, balanced, dripping. The old man chuckled. "It chooses you now. Best not to fight it." "Why me?" Maria's voice cracked, throat raw with salt. "What do you want?" His grin stretched wider. Rain streamed down his face but never seemed to drown him. "Want? No. It's only the tide. Always has to take someone. Tonight, it was you." He dipped the oars again, and the boat surged forward. Maria pressed her hands to her head, rocking. The world tilted with the waves, but she no longer felt sick. She no longer felt much at all. Her skin numbed, her eyes blurred. When she blinked, she saw herself not on the boat but in the water beside it, pale and grinning, arms stretching out. When she blinked again, she was back on the deck. The umbrella rattled, eager. She picked it up. The fleet slowed. Ahead, the fog parted, revealing a stretch of black water so still it reflected the boats perfectly. A mirror sea. The old man stopped rowing. The umbrella in Maria's hand tugged forward, pulling her to the bow. She peered into the reflection. At first, she saw only herself, soaked hair, trembling mouth, eyes wide. Then the image shifted. Her skin bleached. Her mouth stretched too far. Her eyes turned the same blank white as his. The reflection smiled. And when Maria opened her lips to scream, the voice that came out was not her own. It was hollow. It was endless. And it whispered the words she had once refused. "Do you need an umbrella?" The storm raged on. The city was gone. Morning never came. But if anyone wandered the waterfront, searching the drowned piers of Washington, they might see a fleet gliding silently offshore. Boats of rust and rot, figures pale and grinning, and among them a young woman clutching a torn umbrella, her eyes white, her mouth moving in rhythm with the waves, calling out to anyone foolish enough to listen. That's all for tonight. 7 stories told, though none of them are finished. Because stories like these never end. They wait. They linger in the corners of your room, or in the reflection of a window you forgot to close. They hide in the sound of footsteps, in the silence of waves, in the breath between dreams. If you listen closely, you've carried a piece of each tale with you now. A fragment of fever, a shard of glass, a single wet footprint. What you do with them is not my choice. The hour is late, and I should let you go. But if you find yourself awake again, long after the clocks have stopped meaning anything, you'll know where to tune the dial. Until then, keep the lights dim, keep your windows locked, and if someone offers you an umbrella on a night without rain, don't take it.